Rain hammered the intersection like gunfire from a broken sky. Damian Moretti, young, ruthless, untouchable, bled out behind the wheel of his bullet-riddled sedan while masked shooters vanished into the storm. The heir to the city's most feared crime empire had been ambushed, betrayed, and somehow, half dead and hunted, he stumbled to the one place the underworld would never expect, a quiet midnight bakery owned by the one woman he was forbidden to touch. Clara Vale, civilian, innocent, and the younger sister of his most loyal enforcer. When she opened her back door and found the ghost king of the Moretti Empire bleeding on her doorstep, their fates collided in blood and sugar, and nothing would ever be the same. If you want to see how far this story reaches, drop a like, comment the city you're watching from, and follow me to the end. Let's begin. The first bullet punched through the windshield at 11:47 p.m., and Damian Moretti's world exploded into chaos. He'd been driving alone, mistake number one, through the empty industrial district where shipping containers rusted under flickering streetlights and no witnesses existed. The armored black sedan had been bulletproof once. Keyword, once. The second volley of gunfire tore through reinforced glass like paper, and Damian yanked the wheel hard right as sparks erupted across the dashboard. 3 SUVs, professional, coordinated. This wasn't some low-level crew trying to make a name. This was an execution. Damian floored the accelerator, engine screaming as he swerved between containers while muzzle flashes lit up the rain-soaked night. His Glock sat heavy in his shoulder holster, but there were too many shooters and not enough cover. He fired twice through the shattered rear window, heard someone scream, then slammed the brakes and spun the wheel into a brutal J-turn that sent the sedan hydroplaning across wet asphalt. More gunfire. A tire exploded. The sedan lurched violently, and Damian's head cracked against the doorframe hard enough to paint stars across his vision. Blood filled his mouth, copper in rage. He kicked the door open and rolled onto the pavement as bullets chewed through metal where his head had been seconds before. Rain pounded his face. His suit jacket was already soaked, sticking to his ribs where something hot and wet spread beneath the fabric. Shit, he'd been hit. Damian pressed his hand against his side and felt blood pulse between his fingers. Not good. Not fatal yet, but close enough if he didn't move. The SUVs screeched to a stop 50 feet away, doors flying open. 6 masked figures stepped out into the downpour, assault rifles raised, moving with military precision, definitely not amateurs. Damian fired 3 rounds, dropped one shooter, clipped another, then sprinted toward the nearest alley as bullets tore chunks from the brick wall beside his head. His lungs burned. His side screamed. But stopping meant dying, and Damian Moretti had built an empire by refusing to die on anyone's terms but his own. He ducked into the alley, vaulted over a dumpster, and kept running. The rain swallowed the sound of his footsteps as he zigzagged through back streets he'd memorized years ago, when survival meant knowing every exit. Behind him, voices shouted commands in clipped professional tones. Radios crackled. They were hunting him like a wounded animal, because that's exactly what he was. Damian stumbled, caught himself against a wall, and forced his legs to keep moving. Blood soaked through his shirt now, warm and slick, dripping onto the pavement with every step. His vision blurred at the edges. His phone was shattered in his pocket. No backup, no extraction team. No one even knew he'd left the estate alone tonight. Stupid, arrogant, and now potentially dead. The ambush replayed in his head as he ran. The timing, the location, the precision. This wasn't random. Someone inside the family had leaked his route. Someone close enough to know his schedule, his security protocols, his habits. A traitor. The word tasted worse than blood. Damian rounded another corner and nearly collapsed against a rusted chain-link fence. His breathing came in ragged gasp now, each inhale like swallowing broken glass. The rain plastered his black hair to his forehead, and when he looked down, his white dress shirt was dyed crimson from collar to belt. He needed a safe house, a hospital, something. But every location his organization controlled was potentially compromised, and showing up at a hospital with a gunshot wound meant police, questions, exposure, things that didn't exist in Damian's world. Then, through the rain and delirium, he saw it. A small brick building wedged between 2 larger structures, warm light glowing behind steamed windows. Hand-painted letters on the glass read, Vale's Corner Bakery in faded gold script. The scent of fresh bread and cinnamon drifted into the alley despite the storm, absurdly comforting in the middle of his nightmare. And just like that, one name surfaced through the fog of pain. Clara. Damien staggered forward before his brain could overrule the decision. This was insane, reckless. Clara Vale was civilian territory, untouchable, protected by an unspoken rule enforced by her brother Roman, Damien's most trusted enforcer. Roman had made the boundaries clear years ago. My sister doesn't exist in your world. Ever. Damien had agreed. He'd kept his distance. He'd pretended not to notice Clara on the rare occasions their paths crossed at family gatherings. The way she moved through rooms like sunlight through broken glass, warm and soft and completely unaware of the darkness surrounding her. But now, bleeding out in an alley with nowhere else to go, those boundaries meant nothing. Survival meant breaking every rule. Damien reached the bakery's back door and collapsed against it, his fist pounding weakly on the metal. Once. Twice. His knees buckled and he slid down the doorframe, leaving a dark smear of blood on white paint. The door opened. Golden light spilled into the alley, and Clara Vale stood backlit in the doorway, wearing flour-dusted jeans and an oversized cardigan, her dark hair twisted into a messy bun. She'd been laughing at something, probably a podcast or late-night radio show, but the smile died the instant she saw him. Jesus Christ, don't! Damien's voice came out rough, barely recognizable. Don't call anyone. Barely, Baipo. Clara dropped to her knees beside him, hands hovering over his blood-soaked body like she didn't know where to start. You're shot. You need a hospital. No hospitals. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength, his fingers slick with blood. They'll find me. Please. Those green eyes, the same shade as Roman's but infinitely softer, locked onto his face, and Damien watched her make the calculation in real time. She knew who he was. Everyone in the city knew the Moretti name, but knowing and seeing were different things, and right now Clara was seeing exactly what the Empire looked like when it bled. She swallowed hard. Can you stand? Maybe. Then do it, now. Clara hooked her arm under his shoulder and hauled him upright with shocking strength for someone barely 5'4". Damien bit back a scream as pain exploded through his torso, but somehow they made it inside. The bakery's back room smelled like yeast and vanilla, all steel counters and industrial ovens still radiating warmth from the day's baking. Clara kicked the door shut and locked it. Upstairs, she said, my apartment. They half climbed, half dragged themselves up a narrow staircase that felt steeper than Mount Everest. By the time they reached her apartment, a tiny studio above the bakery with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture, Damien's vision had narrowed to a tunnel, and the edges were going dark. Clara maneuvered him onto her couch and immediately started stripping off his jacket. Stay awake, you hear me? Stay awake. Damien tried to laugh and coughed up blood instead. Bossy. Shut up. She peeled back his ruined shirt and her face went pale. Oh, God. The bullet wound sat just below his ribs, an angry red hole pumping blood with each heartbeat. Not immediately fatal if the bullet missed major organs, but bad enough that Damien could feel himself slipping toward unconsciousness. Clara ran to the bathroom and returned with an armful of towels, medical supplies, and a bottle of vodka. She dumped everything on the coffee table and pressed a clean towel against the wound with both hands. I'm not a doctor, she said, voice shaking. I took a first aid course 5 years ago, and I make croissants for a living. Then we're even. Damien's teeth chattered despite the warmth of the apartment. I kill people for a living. Not helping. She kept pressure on the wound while ripping open packages of gauze with her teeth. Her hands trembled, but didn't stop moving. Damien watched her through the haze of pain and shock. The fierce concentration on her face, the way she bit her lower lip when she worked, the flour still dusting her forearms. Roman's baby sister. The girl with the bakery and the soft smile. Currently saving his life. Why'd you open the door? Damien asked, the words slurring together. You knocked. I'm the monster your brother protects you from. Clara looked up then, those green eyes cutting straight through him. Everyone's somebody's monster. Doesn't mean you deserve to bleed out in an alley. She poured vodka directly into the wound, and Damien's back arched off the couch, a strangled sound ripping from his throat. White-hot agony obliterated thought for several seconds. When the world swam back into focus, Clara was stitching him together with steady hands and a sewing needle she'd sterilized over a lighter. "This is going to be ugly," she warned. "Everything about tonight is ugly." She worked in silence for a while, pulling skin closed with makeshift sutures that would have made any real doctor weep. But they held. That's what mattered. Damien watched her face instead of the needle, focusing on the tiny furrow between her eyebrows, the way she counted stitches under her breath, the smudge of flour on her jaw. "Why were you alone?" Clara asked quietly. "Stupid." "That's not an answer." Damien closed his eyes. "Someone inside the organization set me up. I went alone because I didn't know who to trust. And now? Now I trust even fewer people." She tied off the final stitch and wrapped his torso in layers of gauze and medical tape. Her hands lingered on his skin longer than necessary, fingertips warm against his ribs, and Damien felt something dangerous spark in his chest that had nothing to do with bullet wounds. "You should sleep," Clara said, pulling back. "I'll watch for infection." "You should call your brother." "Absolutely not." "Clara, Roman finds out you're here. He'll kill you himself for involving me." She stood and grabbed a blanket from her bed, draping it over Damien's shivering body. "So you're going to rest, heal enough to move, and then you're leaving and pretending this never happened. Deal?" It wasn't a deal. It was a mercy he didn't deserve. But Damien nodded anyway because the alternative was bleeding out in her living room, and at least this way he got to memorize the way lamplight caught gold in her dark hair. "Deal," he whispered. Clara turned off the overhead light, leaving only a small lamp burning in the corner. She settled into the armchair across from the couch, pulling her knees to her chest, and Damien realized she planned to stay awake all night watching him, guarding him. This civilian girl in her flour-dusted cardigan, protecting the monster from his own organization. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. "Clara?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." She didn't answer, but her eyes met his in the dim light, and something passed between them that felt heavier than words. Then darkness pulled him under like a riptide, and Damien Moretti, heir to the most dangerous crime family in the city, surrendered to unconsciousness in a stranger's apartment above a bakery that smelled like home. Bach. Damien woke to sunlight burning through unfamiliar windows and the scent of fresh coffee. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain detonated through his side like a second gunshot, and he collapsed back against the couch with a string of curses that would have impressed his father's worst enforcers. "Easy." Clara appeared from the kitchen area holding 2 mugs, her hair still messy from sleep. "You're stitched together with embroidery thread and prayer. Don't test it." She handed him coffee, black, no sugar, and settled into the armchair. Morning light made her look younger, softer, the dark circles under her eyes the only evidence of her all-night vigil. "How long was I out?" Damien asked. 6 hours. "You didn't die, so I'm counting it as a win." He took a careful sip of coffee and studied her over the rim of the mug. She'd changed into fresh clothes, soft gray sweater, black leggings, but the wariness in her eyes remained. This girl had saved his life, but she wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what kind of danger she'd invited into her home. "You should have called Roman," Damien said. "We covered this last night. He needs to know." "What? That his boss showed up bleeding at my bakery and I patched him up? That I'm now technically an accessory to whatever war you're fighting?" Clara set her mug down hard enough that coffee sloshed over the rim. "Roman has spent my entire life trying to keep his work separate from me. If he finds out about this, it destroys the one thing he's fought to protect. And if I die here, it destroys you. Then don't die." The blunt pragmatism in her voice caught Damien off guard. He'd expected fear, maybe hysteria. Instead, Clara Vale looked at him like he was a problem to be solved, admittedly a dangerous, bleeding problem, but still manageable. "You're not afraid of me," he said, almost a question. Clara leaned back, studying him with those unsettling green eyes. "Should I be?" "Most people are." "Most people haven't seen you pass out on their couch." She tilted her head. "Hard to be afraid of someone after you've sewn their intestines back together." Despite everything, the pain, the betrayal, the assassination attempt, Damien laughed. It hurt like hell, but he laughed anyway, and Clara's mouth quirked into something almost resembling a smile. The moment broke when Damien's phone buzzed in his ruined jacket pocket. He dug it out, miraculously still functional despite the cracked screen, and found 17 missed calls from Roman, 32 from his father, and one text message from an unknown number. "You're not dead yet. Disappointing. We'll try again soon." Ice flooded Damien's veins. Clara watched his expression shift. "What is it?" "They know I survived." He forwarded the message to his personal security team, then powered the phone down completely. "Which means they're looking for me." "Looking where?" "Everywhere." Clara stood abruptly and moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the street below. "Is my bakery on their radar?" "No. Roman made sure you don't exist in our world." Damien forced himself upright, biting back pain. "Which is why I need to leave before that changes." "You can barely stand. I'll manage." "Don't be an idiot." Clara turned from the window, arms crossed. "You move now. You'll tear the stitches and bleed out before you reach the corner. Give it 24 hours minimum." "I don't have 24 hours." "Then make them." They stared at each other across the small apartment. An impasse built on stubborn will and incompatible realities. Damien knew she was right. His body felt like broken machinery held together with tape, but staying put Clara in the crossfire, and that was unacceptable for reasons he refused to examine. "If they find me here," he said slowly, "they won't just kill me. They'll kill anyone who helped me. No witnesses, no mercy. That's how this works." Clara's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure they don't find you." "Clara, one day," she interrupted, "you rest, heal, eat actual food instead of bleeding everywhere. Tomorrow night, you leave and we both pretend this never happened." She moved toward the kitchen. "I'm making breakfast. You're eating it." End of discussion. Damien watched her rummage through cabinets with the same fierce efficiency she'd shown while stitching his wounds. This wasn't the soft, protected civilian he'd imagined from Roman stories. This was someone who'd learned to survive in her own way. Quieter than violence, maybe, but no less formidable. Dangerous, whispered some dark corner of his brain. Not because she could hurt him physically, because she already had him wanting things he'd never allowed himself to want. Clara cracked eggs into a pan and glanced over her shoulder. "You allergic to anything?" "Betrayal. Not a food group." "Should be." She rolled her eyes but didn't comment. Soon the apartment filled with the smell of scrambled eggs, toast, and something cinnamon-scented she pulled from the bakery downstairs. She plated everything with practiced ease and brought it to the coffee table. "Eat," she commanded. Damien ate. The food tasted better than anything he'd had in months. Maybe years. Probably because it wasn't prepared by estate chefs trying to impress him or served at business dinners where poison was a legitimate concern. This was simple, warm, real. Clara ate cross-legged on the floor, her plate balanced on her knees. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." "Last night, why'd you come here? You have safe houses, doctors on payroll, an entire organization at your disposal. Why my bakery?" Damien set his fork down carefully. "Honestly? Preferably. Because everyone I trusted 48 hours ago just tried to kill me." He met her eyes. "And you were the only person in this city I knew absolutely wasn't part of it." Clara absorbed that in silence, her expression unreadable. "Because I don't exist in your world. Because you don't exist in anyone's world but your own." Is that a compliment or an insult? "It's the truth." She looked away, staring at the half-eaten toast on her plate. "Roman works so hard to keep me separate from everything. His job, his life, all of it. Sometimes I think he believes I'm made of glass." "Are you? What do you think?" Damien's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I think anyone made of glass wouldn't have dragged me inside last night." "Fair point." They finished breakfast in comfortable silence. A strange, unexpected ease that shouldn't have existed between a Mafia heir and a bakery owner, but somehow did. When Clara collected the plates, Damien forced himself to his feet, testing his balance. Bad idea. The room tilted sideways, and he grabbed the armrest to keep from face-planting on her hardwood floor. Clara was at his side instantly, one hand steadying his elbow. "Couch," she ordered. "Now." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar for someone in your line of work." She guided him back down with surprising gentleness, and Damien hated how much he wanted to lean into that touch. Clara retrieved the blanket and draped it over him like he was something fragile instead of something lethal. "Sleep," she said. "I need to open the bakery for a few hours, but I'll keep the door between here and downstairs locked. Don't answer if anyone knocks." "Clara." "And don't bleed on my couch again. I just cleaned it." She was gone before he could argue, her footsteps light on the stairs. Damien listened to the distant sounds of the bakery opening, locks clicking, the hiss of the espresso machine, muffled voices as early customers filtered in. Normal. Safe. Everything his world wasn't. He should leave. Right now, while Clara was distracted. Disappear into the city and let her go back to her ordinary life, baking bread and serving coffee to people who'd never held a gun. But his body refused to cooperate, and sleep dragged him under before he could make the decision. Damien woke again in late afternoon to the sound of Clara's voice floating up from the bakery below. "Just a family emergency, Mrs. Chen. I'll be back to normal hours next week." "You work too hard, Clara. You need to rest." "I'm fine, really. Have a good day." The door chimed. Silence fell. Then Clara's footsteps on the stairs, quick and purposeful. She appeared in the apartment carrying a white bakery box and a bottle of water. "You're awake." "Good. How's the pain?" "Manageable," Damien lied. Clara set the box on the coffee table and opened it to reveal an assortment of pastries that looked too good to be real. "Eat something. You lost a lot of blood." "Clara, if you say you're fine one more time, I'm going to stab you with the same needle I used for stitches." He believed her. Damien reached for a croissant and bit into layers of butter-soaked pastry that practically melted on his tongue. "You made these?" "This morning before the bleeding Mafia boss upstairs woke up." Multitasking. She settled into the armchair, tucking her legs beneath her. Roman called. Damien's hand froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" "He's looking for you, obviously. Said you disappeared last night and aren't answering your phone." Clara's eyes stayed level. "I told him I haven't seen you. You shouldn't lie to your brother. And you shouldn't get shot in alleys, but here we are." The casual way she said it, like hiding a wounded crime lord was an everyday inconvenience, made something twist in Damien's chest. He set the croissant down, appetite suddenly gone. "Roman would kill me if he knew I was here," Damien said quietly. "Probably. That doesn't bother you?" Clara leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Look, I'm not stupid. I know what you are, what you do. I know Roman works for you doing things I don't ask about and he doesn't tell me. But you showed up dying at my door and I made a choice." Her voice softened. "Maybe it was the wrong choice, but it was mine." "Why? Why what? Why make that choice? You could have called the police or Roman or just left me in the alley. Why help?" Clara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. "When I was 16, some guys tried to rob the bakery. Late night, closing time. My grandmother was still alive then, and she fought back." Her voice went flat, emotionless. "They broke her arm in 3 places. Roman found out who they were and—" She stopped. "I never asked what happened to them. But after that, Roman made sure the neighborhood knew the bakery was protected. No one's bothered us since." "So you helped me because you owe the organization?" "I helped you because I know what it's like when violence shows up at your door uninvited." She met his eyes. "And because sometimes people need saving even when they don't deserve it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning Damien wasn't ready to unpack. He'd built his entire life on control, on never owing anyone anything, on being the most dangerous person in every room. But sitting here, wounded and vulnerable in Claravale's apartment, he was none of those things. He was just a man who'd run out of places to hide. "Thank you," Damien said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in years. Clara's expression softened. "You already thanked me." "I'll keep thanking you until the debt is paid." "Then you'll be thanking me forever because I'm not keeping score." She stood and moved toward the small kitchen. "I'm making dinner. You're eating it. Then you're sleeping again because you look like death." "Charming." "I'm a baker, not a diplomat." Despite everything, the pain, the danger, the impossible situation, Damien found himself smiling. Actually smiling. Not the calculated expression he wore for business meetings, or the cold mask he showed enemies. A real smile that felt foreign on his face. Clara hummed something tuneless as she cooked, and Damien let himself drift in the strange comfort of her presence. Outside, the city continued its violent churn, deals made in shadows, bodies dropped in rivers, empires rising and falling over breakfast. But here, in this tiny apartment, above a bakery where flour dust caught the dying sunlight, none of that existed. Here, there was only warmth and safety, and the impossible girl who'd opened her door to a monster. And for the first time in his life, Damien Moretti let himself imagine what it might feel like to stay. Mech. Night fell over the city in shades of purple and gold. Clara brought dinner, pasta with homemade sauce, garlic bread, a side salad that looked suspiciously healthy, and they ate together in the soft glow of lamplight. She told him about the bakery, about her grandmother's recipes, about the regular customers who came in every morning at exactly 7:15 for the same order. Damien listened like her words were scripture. He told her things he'd never told anyone, about the weight of inheriting an empire he never asked for, about his father's impossible expectations, about the loneliness of power. Clara didn't flinch. She didn't judge. She just listened. By the time they finished eating, the space between them had shifted into something neither could name but both recognized. Damien caught himself staring at the curve of her mouth when she laughed, the way lamplight turned her eyes to emeralds, the unconscious grace in her movements. Dangerous, that voice whispered again. Not because of who she was, but because of what she made him want to become. You should rest, Clara said eventually, gathering dishes. Big day tomorrow. You know, the whole leave and never speak of this again plan. Right, that plan. But neither of them moved. They stayed frozen in the moment. The apartment silent except for distant city sounds and the thrum of tension building between them. Clara broke first. Damien. His phone exploded with sound. They both jumped. Damien grabbed it from the coffee table and stared at the screen, Roman's name flashing urgently. Don't answer it, Clara said quickly, but Damien knew better. Roman didn't call unless it was life or death, and ignoring him would only make things worse. He swiped to answer and put it on speaker. Where the hell are you? Roman's voice came through tight with barely controlled fury. Your father's losing his mind. The entire organization's tearing itself apart trying to find you. I'm safe, Damien interrupted. That's all you need to know. Bullshit. Someone tried to kill you, someone inside. Until we know who, you're not safe anywhere. I'm handling it. By going dark? By disappearing. Roman's breath came harsh through the speaker. Damien, whoever did this is still out there. They'll try again. I know. Then come in. Let us protect you. How do I know you're not part of it? Silence stretched across the line, wounded, heavy silence that made Clara's expression crumble. You don't, Roman finally said, his voice low. But if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. So either trust me or don't, but stop playing ghost and... He paused. Where are you? Somewhere safe. Damien, 24 hours, Roman. Give me 24 hours to figure out who I can trust. Then I'll come in. Your father won't wait. My father can go to hell. Damien ended the call before Roman could argue. The silence afterward felt heavier than words. Clara stared at the phone like it might explode, her face pale. He's going to find out, she whispered. Not if I leave tonight. You can't. I have to. Damien pushed himself upright, ignoring the screaming pain in his side. Staying here puts you at risk. Roman was right about that much. Clara stood toe-to-toe with him, tiny and fierce, and absolutely refusing to back down. You take 3 steps and you'll collapse. Your stitches won't hold. You need another 12 hours minimum. I've survived worse, and I'm not watching you die from stupidity after I spent all night keeping you alive. They stood locked in silent battle, neither willing to surrender. This close, Damien could see the gold flecks in her green eyes, the faint dusting of freckles across her nose, the rapid pulse at her throat. This close, he could also see the exact moment Clara realized how dangerous the proximity had become. She didn't step back. Neither did he. You can't stay, Clara said, but her voice had lost its certainty. I know. Roman will kill you. I know. This is a terrible idea. I know. Clara's breath hitched. Then why are you still standing here? Damien should have had a dozen answers. Tactical reasons, strategic thinking, survival instincts. But the only truth that mattered was the one currently breaking every rule he'd built his life around. Because leaving right now feels impossible, he said quietly. And just like that, the last thread of distance between them snapped. Clara's hand came up to rest against his chest, right over his racing heartbeat. And Damien forgot how to breathe, forgot the empire, forgot the danger, forgot everything except the impossible girl looking up at him like he might be something more than the monster everyone feared. "One more night," Clara whispered. "Then you go." "One more night," Damien agreed, but they both knew it was a lie. Because whatever had sparked to life in this tiny apartment above a bakery where flour dust caught the lamplight wasn't something that could be contained to a single night. It was already too late. The city hummed beyond the windows, violent, unforgiving, waiting to destroy them both. But for now, in the fragile safety of Clara's world, Damien let himself believe in impossible things. He let himself believe he could be more than blood and brutality. He let himself believe this girl with flour-dusted hands and a soft voice could see past the monster to something worth saving. And when Clara's fingers tightened against his chest, when her eyes met his with something raw and terrified and absolutely certain, Damien Moretti, heir to the city's most feared crime empire, realized he was already lost. Not to the bullet wound, not to the betrayal, but to her. The kiss happened at 2:47 a.m., and it destroyed everything. Damien had been standing at the window, staring at the empty street below, while his body screamed at him to sit down, lie down, do anything except keep testing the stitches holding his torso together. But sitting meant thinking, and thinking meant acknowledging the impossible situation he'd created by staying. Clara appeared beside him without warning, barefoot and silent, her reflection ghosting across the glass. "You should be sleeping," she said. "So should you." "Hard to sleep when you're harboring a fugitive." "Is that what I am now?" "I don't know what you are." Damien turned to face her, and the small movement put them inches apart in the darkness. The city lights beyond the window painted shadows across Clara's face, half illuminated, half hidden, and something about that duality felt achingly appropriate. "I'm the man who's going to get you killed," Damien said quietly. "Not if you leave first." "I will. At dawn." "Good." But neither of them moved. The apartment held its breath around them, all flour-dusted surfaces and warm lamplight and the lingering scent of cinnamon. Beyond these walls existed an empire built on violence, a manhunt with Damien's name on it, and a brother who would burn the city down if he discovered this moment. But inside there was only Clara. Her hand came up to rest against his jaw, fingertips cool against fever-hot skin, and Damien's eyes closed on instinct. When was the last time someone had touched him like this? Gentle, curious, like he was something human instead of something weaponized. "This is a mistake," Clara whispered. "I know." "We can't." "I know." Her thumb traced his cheekbone. "Then why does it feel inevitable?" Because it was. From the moment she'd opened her door and found him bleeding. From the moment she'd made the choice to drag him inside instead of leaving him to die. From the first shared cup of coffee, to the first real conversation, to the first time their eyes met and held for too long. Inevitable. Damien's hand found the curve of her waist, his palm spanning the small of her back, and Clara inhaled sharply. The distance between them evaporated, not in a rush, but in a slow gravitational collapse neither could stop. "Damien," he kissed her. Not gently, not tentatively, but with the raw desperation of a man who'd spent his entire life denying himself softness and suddenly couldn't remember why. Clara made a small sound against his mouth, surprise or surrender, impossible to tell, and then she was kissing him back with equal ferocity. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer despite the blood-soaked bandages, despite the danger, despite everything screaming this would end in ruin. The world narrowed to sensation. Her mouth tasted like mint and recklessness. Her body fit against his like a missing piece he'd never known he'd lost. When Damien's hand slid into her hair and tilted her head back, Clara's breath hitched and he felt it in his bones. Wrong. This was wrong on every level, but God, it felt like the first right thing he'd done in years. Clara broke the kiss first, gasping for air, her forehead pressed against his. "We can't do this." "I know. Roman will kill you." "Let him." "I'm serious." Damien kissed her again, slower this time, deliberate. Clara melted into it with a soft whimper that nearly undid him completely. His wounded side protested the movement, but he ignored it, too lost in the taste of her, the warmth of her, the impossible reality of holding something good in his blood-stained hands. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara's eyes had gone dark, and her lips were swollen, and she looked absolutely wrecked. "Dawn," she whispered. "You leave at dawn." "Dawn," Damien agreed, but his hands didn't leave her waist, and Clara didn't step back, and they both knew dawn would come and change nothing. Because the kiss had already rewritten the rules. Damien woke alone on the couch, with morning light burning through the windows, and Clara's voice drifting up from the bakery below, bright and professional, as she served customers who had no idea a wanted man slept 15 feet above their heads. His phone sat on the coffee table, screen dark and silent. 23 missed calls overnight, 14 from Roman, 9 from his father's office. The rest from various lieutenants and enforcers, all asking the same question in different words. "Where the hell are you?" Damien powered it down completely. He forced himself upright, testing his body's limits. The pain had dulled from excruciating to merely agonizing. Progress. His stitches held. The bandages showed no fresh blood. Clara's amateur medical work had bought him time he shouldn't have had. Time he was now using to make everything worse. Because last night's kiss hadn't been a mistake. It had been a declaration. Damien stood carefully and moved to the small bathroom, catching his reflection in the mirror above the sink. He looked like hell. 3 days of stubble, skin pale beneath bruises, eyes hollow with exhaustion. The monster his enemies feared reduced to a wounded animal hiding in a civilian's apartment. Pathetic. He splashed cold water on his face and tried not to think about the way Clara had tasted. The soft sound she'd made when he'd kissed her. The feel of her fingers tangled in his hair. Failed completely. Footsteps on the stairs. Clara appeared in the doorway holding a white bakery bag and 2 cups of coffee, her hair twisted into a practical bun. She'd changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans, a soft blue sweater, and looked absolutely nothing like someone who'd spent the previous night kissing the city's most wanted man. "You're awake," she said, setting breakfast on the coffee table. "How's the side?" "Fine." Liar. But her tone held no judgment, just tired acceptance of his refusal to admit weakness. They sat at opposite ends of the couch, careful distance, like proximity might reignite whatever had burned between them last night. Damien accepted the coffee and a still warm croissant that probably cost more in skill than it did in ingredients. "You should eat real food," Clara said, "not just pastries. This is real food. Carbs and butter aren't a food group." "Should be." Clara almost smiled. Almost. But tension radiated from her in waves, and when her eyes met his, Damien saw the same conflict he felt mirrored in green depths. Last night had changed everything, and they both knew it. "Roman called again this morning," Clara said quietly. 3 times before I even opened." "What'd you tell him?" "That I haven't heard from you, that I'm worried too." She picked at her croissant without eating. He sounded wrecked, Damien, scared. Guilt twisted like a knife between Damien's ribs. Roman was his best friend, his most loyal enforcer, the one person in the organization he'd trusted absolutely. And now Damien was lying to him while hiding in his sister's apartment and kissing her in the dark. Betrayal wore many faces. "I'll call him today," Damien said. "Let him know I'm alive." "And then?" "Then I disappear properly. Leave the city until I figure out who tried to kill me." Clara's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "Just like that? You vanish and leave everything behind?" "It's the smart play. It's the coward's play." The words hit harder than any bullet. Damien's jaw tightened, something dangerous flickering behind his eyes. "Say that again." "You heard me." Clara set her cup down with controlled force. "Running doesn't solve the problem. Someone in your organization tried to murder you. They'll try again the second you resurface. So either you find them now, or you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. And if finding them means burning everything down, then burn it." The fierce certainty in her voice caught Damien off guard. This wasn't the soft civilian Roman had spent years protecting. This was someone who understood violence even if she didn't participate in it, someone who'd grown up in the shadow of the underworld and learned its language through proximity. You don't know what you're asking, Damien said. Don't I? Clara leaned forward, eyes blazing. I grew up watching my brother leave for work and praying he'd come home. I spent 10 years lying awake wondering if tonight was the night someone put a bullet in him. I know exactly what your world costs. Then why the hell did you let me stay? Because I'm an idiot with a savior complex who can't leave wounded things to die in alleys. I'm not some stray dog, Clara. No, you're worse. You're a man who showed up dying at my door and then kissed me like I was the only thing keeping you alive. Her voice cracked. So don't talk to me about smart plays and disappearing. Either fight for what's yours or admit you've already lost. Silence fell heavy between them. Damien stared at this impossible girl who'd somehow seen straight through every defense he'd built, every wall he'd erected, every lie he told himself about what he wanted versus what he deserved. She was right. Running solved nothing. But staying meant war, and war meant casualties. And the first casualty would be the fragile thing growing between them that had no name and no future and absolutely no chance of survival. If I stay and fight, Damien said slowly, people will die. People are dying anyway. If I stay, you become a target. Clara met his eyes without flinching. I became a target the second I opened my door. Clara. No. She stood abruptly, crossing to the window. You don't get to protect me by making decisions for me. I'm not Roman's baby sister anymore, and I'm not some fragile civilian who needs saving. I made a choice to help you. I'm making another choice now. She turned, silhouetted against morning light. So stop treating me like I'm breakable and start treating me like someone who actually matters. The words punched through Damien's chest and lodged somewhere near his heart. Someone who actually matters. As if there was any universe where she didn't. He crossed the room in 3 painful strides and framed her face with both hands, thumb tracing her jaw. Clara's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. You matter, Damien said roughly. You matter more than anything I've built or fought for or killed to protect. That's the problem. Why is it a problem? Because keeping you safe means walking away. And if I don't want you to, then we're both idiots. Clara's lips curved into something sad and defiant. Good. I hate being an idiot alone. Damien kissed her again because words were failing and touch was the only language that made sense anymore. Clara kissed him back with equal hunger, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer despite the impossibility of it all. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. Damien's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another call. Another reminder of the world waiting beyond these walls. You should answer that, Clara whispered. I should. But he didn't move, and neither did she, suspended in the fragile space between who they were supposed to be and who they were becoming. The phone stopped buzzing, started again immediately. This time Damien grabbed it, glancing at the screen. Roman's name flashed urgent and relentless. I need to take this, Damien said. Clara nodded and stepped back, giving him space but not leaving the room. Damien answered. I'm alive. Where the fuck are you? Roman's voice came through raw with fury and fear. Do you have any idea what's happening right now? Your father's called a meeting. Every lieutenant, every captain, everyone who matters. They're gathering at the estate in 2 hours to discuss succession because you've been missing long enough that people are assuming you're dead. Succession? Your father wants to name a new heir. Ice flooded Damien's veins. He can't do that. He can if you're not there to stop him. Roman's breath came harsh through the speaker. Damien, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, come home, now, or you lose everything. The empire, the throne, everything he'd been groomed for since birth. Damien looked at Clara, standing silhouetted against the window in her tiny apartment above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and safety. She watched him with knowing eyes, already reading the decision forming behind his expression. 2 hours? Damien said. 2 hours, Roman confirmed. And Damien, watch your back. Whoever tried to kill you is probably going to be in that room. The line went dead. Damien set the phone down carefully, every movement controlled despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Clara crossed her arms, waiting. You have to go, she said. Not a question. If I don't show up, I lose the organization. And if you do, then I walk into a room full of people where at least one wants me dead. Sounds fun. Despite everything, Damien almost laughed. Your definition of fun is concerning. I grew up around Roman. My definition of everything is concerning. Clara moved closer, her expression serious. Can you fight like this? With the wound? I'll manage. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Clara studied him for a long moment, then disappeared into her bedroom. She returned carrying a black button-down shirt still in dry cleaning plastic. This was Roman's. He left it here months ago and never picked it up. Might fit better than your shredded one. Damien accepted it, fingers brushing hers. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Clara's jaw tightened. Just promise you'll come back. Clara, promise me, Damien, because I didn't patch you up and hide you and... She stopped, swallowing hard. I didn't do all this just to watch you die in some boardroom power play. Damien cupped her face, memorizing the feel of her skin, the exact shade of her eyes, the way she looked at him like he was something worth saving instead of something already damned. I promise, he said, and meant it more than any vow he'd ever spoken. Then he kissed her one last time, slower, deeper, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her mouth, the warmth of her body pressed against his, the impossible rightness of holding her. When they broke apart, Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Go, she whispered, before I change my mind and lock you in. Would you? Absolutely. Damien allowed himself one more second of this, her face, her warmth, her existence, before forcing himself to step back. He changed into Roman's shirt, testing his range of motion. The stitches pulled but held. Good enough. Clara handed him his ruined jacket, freshly cleaned but still bearing the evidence of violence. Your gun's in the inside pocket. I didn't touch it. You went through my jacket? You were bleeding everywhere. Someone had to clean it. Fair point. Damien checked the Glock, fully loaded, safety on, and tucked it back into his shoulder holster. The familiar weight settled against his ribs like an old friend. He caught his reflection in the window glass. Black shirt, dark pants, hollow eyes, 3 days of stubble. He looked like exactly what he was. Dangerous, deadly, desperate. How do I look? He asked. Clara's expression went soft and sad. Like someone about to start a war. Good. That's what they need to see. She walked him to the door, fingers twisting together nervously. At the threshold, Damien paused, one hand on the frame. If something happens, nothing's going to happen. Clara, you promised. She looked up at him, fierce and terrified, and absolutely refusing to accept any outcome except his survival. So keep your promise. Damien nodded once, then turned and descended the narrow staircase. The bakery below was empty now, closed for the afternoon, all warm light and the lingering scent of sugar. He paused at the back door, one hand on the lock. Behind him, Claire's footsteps on the stairs. He didn't turn around. If he looked at her again, he wouldn't leave. Damien? Yeah? Be careful. 2 words, simple, inadequate, and somehow perfect. Always, Damien lied, and stepped into the alley before he could change his mind. The city swallowed him whole. Damien moved through back streets and service alleys he'd memorized years ago, avoiding main roads and surveillance cameras. His side screamed with every step, but he pushed through it, years of training overriding pain signals. He flagged down a cab 8 blocks from Claire's bakery and gave the driver an address 3 miles from the Moretti estate. No direct routes, no patterns anyone could trace. The driver, an older man with gray temples and tired eyes, glanced at Damien in the rearview mirror. You okay, man? You look rough. Long night. Ain't they all? They drove in silence through afternoon traffic. Damien watched the city slide past the window. His city, the empire he'd inherited through blood and violence and his father's ruthless ambition. Every block held a memory. Every corner concealed a secret. Somewhere in this urban sprawl lurked the person who'd tried to kill him. Someone close. Someone trusted. Someone who'd be sitting in that boardroom in 90 minutes, pretending loyalty while calculating their next move. Damien's phone buzzed. Text from Roman. Where are you? Another buzz. Unknown number. Coming home to die? How noble. Ice slid down Damien's spine. The same number from the threatening text 2 nights ago. Someone was watching, tracking, waiting. Damien forwarded both messages to his private security team with instructions to trace the unknown number, then powered the phone down. If they were tracking him electronically, he'd just gone dark. The cab dropped him at a corner store 3 blocks from the estate. Damien paid cash and disappeared into the afternoon foot traffic. His wound throbbed with every heartbeat, but the bleeding had stopped. Clara's stitches held. Clara. Her name echoed in his head like a prayer or a curse. Impossible to tell which. He'd promised to come back, but promises meant nothing if he walked into an ambush. Damien reached the estate's outer perimeter and paused in the shadow of an oak tree older than the organization itself. The Moretti compound sprawled across 5 acres of manicured grounds, main house, guest houses, security buildings, all surrounded by 12-foot walls and enough armed guards to start a small war. Home, prison, kingdom, all 3. Damien's phone powered back on long enough to send one message to Roman. I'm here. Then he approached the main gate. 2 guards stood post, Marco and Vincent, both soldiers he'd known for years. Their expressions flickered between relief and shock when they recognized him. Boss, Marco breathed. Jesus, we thought, where's the meeting? Main boardroom. Your father's already inside with the other families. Other families? Vincent shifted uncomfortably. The DeLucas. Your father invited them to discuss the succession. The DeLucas. Of course. Old allies, longtime partners, and the family that had been pushing for a marriage alliance between their daughter Vivian and Damien for the past 3 years. This wasn't just a succession meeting. It was a coup. Damien's jaw tightened. Let me through. The guard stepped aside without argument. Damien crossed the grounds with purposeful strides, ignoring the stares from other security personnel. He probably looked like hell, rough, wounded, dangerous. But that worked in his favor. Let them see the monster. Let them remember why they feared him. The main house loomed ahead, all marble columns and old money. Damien took the front steps 2 at a time despite the protest from his wounded side. The doors opened before he reached them. Roman stood in the entryway looking equal parts relieved and furious. You're late, Roman said. I'm here. That's what matters. Where the hell have you been? Surviving. Roman grabbed Damien's arm, pulling him aside into an empty corridor. You look like you got hit by a truck. What happened? Someone tried to kill me. You already know this. I know you disappeared for 3 days without a word. I know your father called this meeting to replace you. I know you're about to walk into a room full of people who think you're weak. Roman's grip tightened. So where were you? Damien met his best friend's eyes and lied with practiced ease. Safe house outside the city, off the grid, healing. Alone? Alone. Roman studied him for a long moment, reading micro-expressions Damien couldn't fully control. You're lying to me. I'm protecting you. From what? From whatever's coming next. Before Roman could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. A young lieutenant appeared, eyes wide. They're waiting for you, sir. Your father said to begin without you if you didn't show in the next 5 minutes. Damien straightened, ignoring the pain lancing through his torso. Then let's not keep him waiting. He strode toward the boardroom with Roman at his side. Every step brought him closer to the confrontation that would either cement his position or destroy everything he'd built. The boardroom doors stood open, dark wood and brass like the entrance to a throne room, because that's exactly what it was. Damien walked through. The room fell silent as death. 20 faces turned toward him, lieutenants, captains, underbosses, all seated around the massive conference table that had witnessed decades of deals, betrayals, and bloodshed. At the head sat Damien's father, Giovanni Moretti, flanked by 2 members of the De Luca family. And beside them, elegant and serpentine, sat Vivian De Luca. She looked exactly as Damien remembered. Sleek black dress, dark hair perfectly styled, sharp features that could cut glass. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable when she saw him. Surprise? Disappointment? Impossible to tell. You're late, Giovanni said, his voice cold and formal. The voice of a king addressing a subordinate, not a father greeting his son. I'm here, Damien replied, moving to stand at the opposite end of the table. Every eye in the room tracked his movement, taking in his rough appearance, his obvious injury, the barely controlled violence radiating from his posture. Good. Let them see what survival looked like. We were just discussing your absence, Giovanni continued. 3 days without contact, no word of your location. The organization interpreted this as either incompetence or cowardice. Or intelligence, Damien countered. Someone tried to kill me. I went underground to figure out who before giving them a second chance. Murmurs rippled around the table. Several lieutenants exchanged glances. Vivian's expression remained perfectly neutral, but something flickered behind her dark eyes. And did you? One of the DeLuca representatives, Antonio, Vivian's uncle, leaned forward. Figure out who? Working on it. Not good enough. Giovanni stood, commanding attention through sheer presence. This organization cannot function with an heir who disappears the moment trouble arrives. Leadership requires visibility, strength, decisiveness. I'm standing here, aren't I? You're standing here wounded, disheveled, and 3 days late. Giovanni's gaze swept the room. Which is why I've called this meeting, to discuss alternative succession plans. There are no alternatives, Damien said flatly. I'm your heir. That doesn't change because I survived an assassination attempt. It changes when your survival comes at the cost of the organization's stability. The words hung in the air like drawn blades. This wasn't about succession. This was about control. Giovanni wanted to remind everyone, especially Damien, who really held power in the Moretti Empire. And he'd chosen to do it publicly, in front of allies and subordinates, to maximize humiliation. Classic move. Damien had learned from the best. So what's your proposal? Damien asked, voice dangerously calm. Strip me of the heir position? Hand it to someone else? Or were you thinking of a marriage alliance to stabilize things? His eyes cut to Vivian. She smiled slightly, acknowledging the hit. A marriage alliance would certainly help, Giovanni said. The DeLuca family has been generous allies. Combining our organizations through formal union would benefit everyone. Everyone except me? Your personal preferences are irrelevant, are they? Damien moved around the table slowly, every step calculated. Because last I checked, I'm the one who's been running operations for the past 2 years while you played politics. I'm the one who doubled our territory. I'm the one who earned respect through action, not manipulation. Respect means nothing when you're dead. But I'm not dead, am I? Damien stopped directly across from his father. I survived. Despite the ambush, despite the betrayal, despite whoever in this room decided I was expendable. So maybe the question isn't whether I'm fit to lead. He let his gaze sweep every face around the table. Maybe the question is who's guilty. Silence crashed through the room like a physical force. Several people shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the table. Vivian's smile never wavered, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her water glass. You're accusing someone here? Giovanni's voice went cold. I'm saying the ambush was professional, well-timed, expertly executed. That takes inside knowledge. Or luck. I don't believe in luck, Father. I believe in patterns. And the pattern says someone close set me up. Damien's hand rested casually on the back of an empty chair, but the threat in his posture was unmistakable. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to find who did this. And when I do, I'm going to make an example that'll be remembered for decades. Big talk from someone who spent 3 days hiding, Vivian said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was silk over steel. Where were you, Damien? Really? Their eyes met across the table. She knew something, or suspected something. The calculation behind her smile said she was fishing, testing, looking for weakness. Somewhere safe, Damien said. Safe from whom? Everyone. Including your own people? Especially my own people. Vivian's smile widened. How lonely that must be, having no one to trust. I manage. Do you? She leaned forward slightly. Because from where I'm sitting, you look exhausted, wounded, desperate. Not exactly the image of a strong leader. And yet I'm still standing. For now. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Damien read it clearly. Vivian knew something, or had done something, and was daring him to figure out what before it was too late. Roman stood from his seat at the far end of the table. Enough. This isn't helping anyone. Damien's alive. He's here. The succession question is settled. Is it? Giovanni's expression remained cold. Because I see a wounded man making threats he can't back up. Then let me back them up. Damien straightened to his full height, ignoring the screaming pain in his side. Give me 1 week. 7 days to find the traitor and prove I'm fit to lead. If I fail, we can revisit succession. But until then, I'm still your heir and I'm still running this organization. And if you're killed during this week, then you'll have your answer about whether I was strong enough. Father and son stared at each other across the boardroom. Two apex predators locked in silent battle for dominance. The rest of the room held its breath. Finally, Giovanni nodded once. 1 week. But Damien? Yes? If you fail, the wedding with Vivian moves forward immediately. No arguments, no delays. Ice flooded Damien's veins. This had been the play all along. Force him into a corner where the only escape was marriage to a woman he didn't trust, cementing an alliance that would benefit everyone except him. Classic manipulation. And Damien had walked right into it. He glanced at Vivian, who was watching him with predatory interest, then at Roman, whose expression had gone carefully blank. 1 week. 7 days to find a traitor, survive whatever came next, and figure out how to escape the trap closing around him, all while protecting Clara from the fallout. Deal, Damien said, because he had no other choice. Excellent. Giovanni resumed his seat. Then this meeting is adjourned. Everyone back to your posts. And Damien? His father's eyes held zero warmth. Get cleaned up. You look like hell. The room emptied quickly, people eager to escape the tension. Within minutes, only Damien, Roman, and Vivian remained. Vivian stood gracefully, smoothing her dress. Walk me out, Damien? I'm busy. It wasn't a request. Roman looked between them, jaw tight. I'll be outside. He left, door closing with a soft click. Vivian moved around the table with predatory grace, stopping just close enough to invade personal space. You've been busy these past 3 days? Surviving. Is that what you call it? Her eyes traced his features with clinical interest. You look different, softer somehow. Careful, Vivian. I'm not in the mood. When are you ever? She smiled. But you should know, whatever you've been doing, whoever you've been with, it ends now. We have a deal. We have nothing until I say we do. Your father says otherwise, and in 1 week, when you inevitably fail to find your traitor, you'll walk down that aisle and marry me like you were always meant to. Damien's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make a point. Listen carefully. I don't know what game you're playing, but if I find out you had anything to do with that ambush... You'll what? Vivian's smile never faltered. Kill me? Please. We both know you're too honorable for that. It's your greatest weakness. She twisted her wrist free with surprising strength and stepped back. 1 week, Damien. 7 days until you're mine. She headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. Oh, and whoever she is? The woman who patched you up and made you forget yourself? I'd keep her very, very far away from all this, because when I find out who she is... Vivian's smile turned razor sharp. I'm going to destroy her. Then she was gone, heels clicking down the corridor like a countdown timer. Damien stood alone in the empty boardroom, his father's ultimatum ringing in his ears and Vivian's threat burning in his chest. 1 week, 7 days to save everything, including Clara, especially Clara. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Tick-tock, little prince. The clock is running. Damien stared at the message, rage and fear warring in his chest. Then he forwarded it to his security team and walked out of the boardroom with one thought crystallizing into absolute certainty. Someone was going to die before this week ended. He just had to make sure it wasn't him. Or the woman he'd left behind in a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and safety. The woman who'd somehow become the only thing worth fighting for in his entire blood-soaked empire. Damien didn't go back to Clara. Not that night. Not the next day. Not when every instinct screamed to run to her bakery and bury himself in the only safety he'd known in years. Because Vivian's threat hung over him like a guillotine blade, and the moment he went near Clara, that blade would drop. So instead, Damien became a ghost. He moved through the city's underworld with surgical precision, calling in every favor, interrogating every contact, following every thread that might lead to the person who'd orchestrated the ambush. Roman stayed at his side through it all, silent, watchful, reading the tension in Damien's shoulders like a book written in a language only best friends understood. On the third night, they sat in Damien's private office at the estate, surrounded by files, surveillance photos, and bank records that revealed nothing useful. Damien's wound had started healing properly, the pain dulling to a manageable throb, but exhaustion carved shadows under his eyes. "You need to sleep," Roman said from the leather chair across the desk. "I need answers. You need to not collapse." Damien ignored him, flipping through another file. Numbers blurred together. His brain felt stuffed with cotton and rage. Roman leaned forward. "Where were you? Really?" "I told you. You lied to me." Roman's voice stayed level, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. 3 days. You disappeared for 3 days. And I know you weren't at any safe house because I checked every single one. Damien's hands stilled on the papers. "Drop it, Roman." "Can't. Because my best friend is lying to me, and the only reason someone lies is because they're protecting something." Roman's jaw tightened. Or someone. The air between them turned sharp as broken glass. Damien looked up slowly, meeting Roman's gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke, the silence heavy with unasked questions and unspoken truths. "Let it go," Damien said quietly. "I can't." "You have to." "Why?" Roman stood, frustration bleeding through his usual control. "Because you're the boss? Because you said so. That's not how this works. We're supposed to trust each other. And we do. Then tell me where you were." "No." "Damien, I said no." Damien's voice went cold, the tone he used for subordinates, not friends. "Drop it or get out." Roman stared at him like he'd been slapped. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Fine." Roman grabbed his jacket. "When you're ready to stop lying to the people trying to keep you alive, you know where to find me." He left without another word, the door closing with restrained violence. Damien sat alone in the sudden silence, guilt twisting like a blade between his ribs. But telling Roman the truth meant exposing Clara, and exposing Clara meant painting a target on her back that no amount of protection could erase. Some lies were necessary, even the ones that destroyed friendships. His phone buzzed. Text from Clara. "Are you okay?" 3 words that shouldn't have hit as hard as they did. Damien stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, "Fine. Busy. Don't worry." The response came immediately. "Too late for that." Then, "When can I see you?" Damien's thumb hovered over the keyboard. The smart answer was never. The safe answer was, "When this is over." The honest answer was, "Right now, because I'm drowning and you're the only thing keeping me afloat." He typed, "Soon. I promise." Another lie. He was getting good at those. The break came on day 5. Marco, one of Damien's security team, walked into his office at midnight carrying a tablet and wearing an expression that said he'd found something big. "Boss? You need to see this." Damien looked up from the financial records he'd been cross-referencing for 6 hours straight. "What is it?" Marco set the tablet on the desk, pulling up a series of bank transactions. "We traced that unknown number sending you threats. Took forever because whoever set it up used multiple layers of encryption and routing. And we finally cracked it." Marco's finger tapped the screen. 3 wire transfers. All made the day before your ambush. All from the same offshore account. Damien leaned forward, studying the numbers. 200,000. Split between 3 different recipients. Payment for a professional hit. "Can you trace the source account?" "Already did." Marco swiped to another screen. "Took some creative accounting, but we followed the money back through shell companies and front organizations until we hit the original deposit." He pulled up a final document. Damien stared at the name on the screen and felt the world tilt sideways. DeLuca Holdings. Vivian's family company. "That's not all," Marco continued, pulling up another file. "Check the timestamps on these messages." A series of text exchanges appeared. Encrypted communications between the unknown number and 3 different phones. The content was damning. Coordinates for the ambush site, details about Damien's route, confirmation of payment upon completion, and every single message originated from the same location, the DeLuca estate. Jesus Christ, Damien breathed. There's more. Marco pulled up surveillance footage from the night of the ambush. We finally got access to traffic cameras near the scene. Watch this. The grainy video showed 3 SUVs converging on the intersection. In the front passenger seat of the lead vehicle, visible for just 3 frames before the window tinted black, sat a figure in expensive clothes and perfectly styled dark hair. Vivienne. She'd been there. She'd orchestrated the entire thing. The assassination attempt. The threats. The manipulation of his father. All of it designed to weaken Damien's position, force him into the marriage alliance, and give the DeLuca family control over the Moretti empire. That conniving... Damien couldn't even finish the sentence. Rage flooded his system so completely that his hands shook. Where is she now? Back at her estate. Want me to bring her in? No. Damien's mind raced through possibilities, calculating angles. She can't know we have this yet. The second she realizes we've traced it back to her, she'll destroy the evidence and blame someone else. So what do you want to do? Damien stood, ignoring the protest from his healing wound. Call an emergency meeting. Every lieutenant, every captain. The DeLucas too, tomorrow night at the estate. Boss, I'm going to bury her in front of everyone. Damien's voice went deadly calm. Every family that matters will watch Vivienne DeLuca get exposed for what she is. And when I'm done, there won't be enough left of her reputation to fill a matchbox. Marco nodded and left to make the arrangements. Damien stood alone in his office, staring at the evidence on the tablet screen. Vivienne had tried to kill him, had manipulated his father, had threatened Clara, and now she was going to pay for all of it. His phone buzzed. Text from Clara. I miss you. 3 words that made his chest ache. Damien typed back, tomorrow. I'll explain everything tomorrow. This time it wasn't a lie. Tomorrow, he'd end this. Tomorrow, he'd reclaim his empire. Tomorrow, he'd be free to choose what he wanted instead of what was expected. And what he wanted was currently running a bakery and worrying about him despite every reason not to. Damien pocketed the phone and started planning the confrontation that would either save everything or destroy it completely. The boardroom filled quickly the following evening. 24 hours' notice for an emergency meeting wasn't much, but everyone showed. The Moretti lieutenants and captains filed in first, taking their usual seats around the massive table. Then came the DeLuca representatives, Antonio, Vivienne's uncle, followed by her father Carlo, and finally Vivienne herself. She wore red tonight, blood red, like she knew what was coming and chose to dress for war. Her eyes found Damien's across the room and something predatory flickered in their depths. She thought she'd won, thought the week was almost up and Damien had failed to find his traitor. She had no idea the trap was already sprung. Giovanni entered last, taking his seat at the head of the table with the bearing of someone who believed he still controlled everything. Roman slipped in behind him, positioning himself near the door. Their eyes met briefly, still not speaking, still not resolved. But Roman's presence meant he was here for whatever came next. This better be important, Giovanni said. It's not protocol to call emergency meetings without advance notice. It's important. Damien stood at the opposite end of the table, a folder of documents sitting closed in front of him. I found the traitor. The room went absolutely silent. Every face turned toward him. Vivienne's expression remained perfectly neutral, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her water glass. Explain, Giovanni commanded. 5 days ago, I promised to find whoever orchestrated my assassination attempt. Damien's voice carried through the room with cold precision. I've spent this week following the money, tracing communications and gathering evidence, and I found exactly what I was looking for. He opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. Bank transfer records. $200,000, wired to 3 separate accounts the day before the ambush. Professional hitmen don't work for free. Carlo DeLuca leaned forward, studying the papers. These accounts could belong to anyone. They do belong to someone. 3 convicted felons with expertise in tactical operations, all currently sitting in federal lockup awaiting trial for unrelated charges. Damien slid another document across. They've been very cooperative with my investigators. More papers followed. Testimony, confessions, communications logs. Each piece of evidence built the case like bricks in a wall. The payments originated from an offshore account registered to DeLuca Holdings, Damien continued. The coordination messages came from phones registered to the DeLuca estate. And surveillance footage from that night shows someone very interesting in the lead vehicle. He pulled out the final piece, the grainy traffic camera screenshot blown up to show Vivian's face clearly visible through the SUV window. Every eye in the room turned to her. Vivian stared at the photo for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she started laughing. Not nervous laughter, not defensive laughter, cold, genuine amusement. "Oh, Damien," she said, still smiling. "You really thought you had me, didn't you?" "The evidence speaks for itself." "Does it?" Vivian stood gracefully, moving around the table. "Because all I see is circumstantial evidence that proves nothing. Bank transfers from a company account I don't personally control. Messages from phones anyone could have accessed. A surveillance photo that shows me in a vehicle driving through the city." She stopped directly across from him. "None of that proves I ordered anything. The hitman's testimony can be bought, coerced, fabricated." Vivian's smile widened. "You of all people should know how easy it is to make people say what you want them to say." "Then explain why you were there that night." "I was visiting a friend. Wrong place, wrong time, pure coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidence." "Neither do I." Vivian leaned forward, voice dropping to a purr. "Which is why I made very sure every piece of actual evidence was destroyed weeks ago. What you have is theater, smoke and mirrors designed to make you feel like you're winning." The confidence in her voice sent ice through Damien's veins. She was right. The hitman could recant. The financial records were circumstantial. The photo proved nothing definitively. Without hard proof, concrete, undeniable evidence, this was just his word against hers. "You tried to kill me," Damien said flatly. "Prove it." Vivian straightened, addressing the entire room. "Damien's desperate. The week is almost up and he hasn't found his traitor, so he's manufacturing evidence against me to avoid the marriage arrangement." She turned back to him. "It's clever, I'll give you that, but not clever enough." Giovanni's expression had gone dark and calculating. "Damien, do you have any proof beyond what's been presented?" "I have everything. Proof that would stand up in court, that couldn't be explained away or dismissed." Damien's jaw tightened. "Not yet." "Then this meeting is premature." Giovanni stood. "Accusations of this magnitude require absolute certainty. Until you have it, the marriage arrangement stands." "Father, the discussion is over." Giovanni left, followed by most of the Moretti lieutenants. The DeLuca representatives filed out next, Carlo throwing Damien a look of pure contempt. Within minutes, only Damien, Vivian, and Roman remained. Vivian collected her purse, moving toward the door with unhurried grace. At the threshold, she paused. "I warned you," she said softly. 1 week, 7 days to find your traitor or marry me." She checked her watch. "You have 48 hours left." "And Damien?" Her smile turned razor sharp. "I'd spend them wisely, because when that clock runs out, you're mine. And so is your entire empire." She left. Roman crossed to Damien's side, staring at the evidence scattered across the table. "She's good." "She's a sociopath. Same thing in our world." Roman picked up the photo of Vivian in the SUV. "This proves she was there. It proves she was in a car. That's all." Damien slammed his fist on the table, sending papers flying. She covered her tracks too well. Every connection, every communication, every piece of actual evidence, gone. What's left is just enough to make me look paranoid or desperate. So what do we do? I don't know. The admission tasted like poison. Damien had been so certain, had spent 5 days building what he thought was an ironclad case, and Vivian had dismantled it in under 10 minutes. His phone buzzed. Text from Clara. "Can I see you tonight, please?" Damien stared at the message, something cracking in his chest. Clara. The one good thing in this nightmare. The one person who had no agenda, no manipulation, no ulterior motive, just genuine care for a man who'd shown up bleeding at her door. I need to go, Damien said suddenly. Where? Out. Roman's eyes narrowed. Damien! I'll be back later. Don't follow me. The hell I won't. Vivian just threatened you. I can handle Vivian. Can you? Roman blocked his path. Because from where I'm standing, you're about to marry a woman who tried to murder you. And the only reason that's happening is because you're keeping secrets from the people trying to help. Roman, where were you? Roman's voice cracked. 3 days. Gone. No contact. No explanation. And now you're disappearing again and refusing to tell me why. Because it's safer for everyone if you don't know. Safer for who? Damien met his best friend's eyes. For the person I'm protecting. Understanding dawned across Roman's face like a sunrise. Slow, terrible, inevitable. No, Roman breathed. Tell me you didn't. Didn't what? Tell me you didn't drag a civilian into this mess. Tell me you didn't put someone innocent at risk because you needed to hide. Damien said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Roman's expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally cold fury. Who is she? Doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't. Vivian's looking for leverage against you. The second she finds out you care about someone. Roman stopped, something worse than anger flooding his features. Wait, is that why you've been avoiding me? Because you know I'd recognize her? Roman, it's someone I know. Roman's voice went dead. Someone close enough that seeing her would give it away. Drop it. How close, Damien? Family? Friend? Roman took a step back, horror replacing fury. Oh God, not her. Tell me it's not her. I'm leaving. Tell me it's not Clara. The name detonated in the space between them like a grenade. Damien's silence confirmed everything. Roman's face drained of color. My sister. You went to my sister. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Roman's voice cracked. You could have gone anywhere. Any safe house, any contact, any of the dozens of places designed exactly for this situation. But instead you showed up bleeding at my baby sister's bakery and dragged her into a world I've spent my entire life keeping her out of. She saved my life, and you repaid her by making her a target. Roman's hands fisted at his sides. Do you have any idea what you've done? The second Vivian finds out, and she will find out. Clara's dead, not threatened, not scared, dead. I won't let that happen. You can't stop it. You couldn't even prove Vivian guilty with a room full of evidence. How exactly are you going to protect Clara from someone that smart? The question hung unanswered because they both knew the truth. He couldn't. I'll figure it out, Damien said. When? In the 48 hours before you're forced to marry the woman hunting for your weakness? Roman's laugh came out broken. Clara's not a soldier. She's not trained for this. She's a civilian who bakes bread and closes up at midnight and has no idea what's coming for her. Then help me protect her. How? Roman spread his arms. By keeping her locked in a safe house for the rest of her life? By telling her she can't go back to the bakery our grandmother built because the man she saved betrayed her by existing? His voice went quiet and lethal. Or should I just tell her the truth? That Damien Moretti, my boss, my best friend, used her and then abandoned her the second things got complicated. That's not what happened, isn't it? Roman moved toward the door. You stayed with her. You let her patch you up. You made her care about you, and now you're standing here trying to figure out how to cut her loose without getting her killed. He stopped at the threshold. That's not protection, Damien. That's cowardice dressed up as sacrifice. What would you have me do? Stay away from her, completely, forever. Roman's eyes blazed with fury and fear. Because the alternative is watching my sister die for your mistakes, and I won't survive that. Neither will you. He left. The door closed with awful finality. Damien stood alone in the empty boardroom, surrounded by useless evidence and the smoking wreckage of his closest friendship. His phone buzzed again. Clara. Damien? Are you coming? His thumb hovered over the keyboard. Roman was right. The smart move was to cut all contact, disappear from Clara's life completely. Let her think he'd used her and moved on. Better she hate him than die for him. But the thought of never seeing her again, never hearing her laugh, never tasting her kiss, never falling asleep to the sound of her breathing, felt like dying. Damien typed, "On my way." Then he grabbed his jacket and walked out of the estate before he could change his mind. Some mistakes were worth making, even the ones that destroyed everything. Eek. Clara's apartment smelled like vanilla and cinnamon when Damien arrived just after midnight. She opened the door wearing soft pajama pants and an oversized sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, and the relief that flooded her face when she saw him made Damien's chest ache. "You came," she breathed. "I promised." She pulled him inside and locked the door. Then, without warning, she threw her arms around him and held on like he might disappear again. Damien stood frozen for a moment before his arms came up to circle her waist, burying his face in her hair. "I was worried," Clara whispered against his shoulder. "No word for days, just those short texts. I didn't know if you were okay or—" "I'm okay. Are you?" She pulled back, hands framing his face. "Because you look exhausted and hurt and like you're about to fall apart. Rough week. Tell me." So he did. Not everything, but enough. He told her about the evidence against Vivian, about the confrontation that went nowhere, about his father's ultimatum and the marriage arrangement closing around him like a noose. He didn't tell her about Roman discovering the truth. That wound was too fresh. Clara listened without interrupting, her hands never leaving his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "So in 48 hours you have to marry her," Clara finally said, "unless I find proof she can't explain away." "Will you?" "I don't know." "And if you don't?" Damien pulled away, unable to hold her gaze. "Then I do what's necessary to protect the organization." "You mean you give up?" "I mean I accept reality." "No." Clara crossed her arms. "You're Damien Moretti. You don't accept anything. You fight until there's nothing left to fight for." "Some fights can't be won." "Bullshit." Her voice went hard. "You're scared. Not of Vivian, not of your father. You're scared of what you want. Clara, you're scared because you came here that first night and found something you weren't supposed to want. Something soft and civilian and completely incompatible with your world." She moved closer. "And now you're trying to convince yourself that walking away is noble instead of admitting you're just afraid." The words cut deeper than any blade, because she was right. Damien had spent his entire life being the monster everyone expected. The heir, the killer, the cold strategist who made impossible decisions without flinching. But Clara had seen something else in him that first night, something human, something worth saving, and terrified him more than any assassination attempt ever could. "I can't protect you," Damien said quietly. "Not from Vivian, not from my world. The second she finds out you exist, you're dead. And I won't—" His voice cracked. "I won't watch you die because of me." "Then don't watch." Clara took his hands. "Fight beside me instead." "You don't understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly. You're asking me to walk away and pretend this never happened. To go back to my normal life and forget the man who showed up bleeding and changed everything." Her grip tightened. "But I can't do that, Damien, because somewhere between patching your wounds and falling asleep watching you breathe, I stopped being able to imagine a world where you don't exist in it." The confession hung in the air between them. Damien stared at this impossible girl who should have been terrified of him, who should have run the moment she learned his name, who should have chosen safety over whatever insanity this was. But Clara Vale had never been good at should. "This ends badly," Damien warned. "No matter what we do, no matter how we fight, this world doesn't let people like me have happy endings. Then let's have an unhappy one together, despite everything, the danger, the impossible odds, the looming disaster." Damien laughed, actual laughter that felt foreign and genuine and absolutely wrong for the situation. Clara smiled. "What? You're insane." "Probably. But so are you for coming back here." "Fair point." She pulled him toward the couch, settling against his side carefully to avoid his healing wound. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city humming beyond the windows. "What happens in 48 hours?" Clara finally asked. "If you don't find the proof?" "I marry Vivian." "And us?" Damien's arm tightened around her. "There is no us." "Can't be. Vivian would make sure of it." "So we have 48 hours. "Clara, 48 hours where you're still yours and I'm still mine and the world hasn't ended yet." She looked up at him. "Let's not waste them pretending this doesn't matter." She was right. They were both right and wrong and completely doomed. But Damien was so tired of fighting the only good thing in his life. So he kissed her. Slow and deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her mouth, the warmth of her body, the sound she made when his hand slid into her hair. Clara kissed him back with equal hunger, all softness and fire and reckless certainty. And for a few stolen hours in a tiny apartment above a bakery, Damien let himself pretend that love was enough, that wanting something badly enough could make it real, that maybe, just maybe, monsters deserved happy endings too. But dawn came too quickly, and with it, the text message that destroyed everything. Damien's phone buzzed at 6 a.m., waking them both from where they'd fallen asleep tangled together on the couch. He reached for it groggily, expecting another threat from Vivian or an update from his security team. Instead, he found a photo, Clara's bakery, taken from across the street, and beneath it a message from Vivian, "Found her. Let's talk. Alone. 1 hour, or she burns." Damien stared at the photo on his phone screen, Clara's bakery framed in morning light, the windows dark, the street empty, and felt something cold and lethal crystallize in his chest. Clara sat up beside him, reading the tension in his body. "What is it?" He showed her the phone. Her face went white. "She knows." "Yeah." "What does she want?" "Me." Damien stood, already reaching for his clothes. "Alone. 1 hour." "You can't go." Clara grabbed his arm. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap." He pulled on his shirt, ignoring the protest from his healing wound. "But if I don't show, she burns your bakery, with you inside it, probably." "Then we call the police?" "And say what? That a member of one of the city's most powerful families is threatening a civilian? They won't touch her." Damien checked his gun, ejecting the magazine to verify the round count before slamming it back home. "This is between me and Vivian now." Clara stood, blocking his path to the door. "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. It's my bakery." "Which is exactly why you're staying here." Damien's hands came up to frame her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "She wants leverage. The second you show up, she has it. But if you stay hidden, I can negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "She tried to kill you once already." "Which means she'll try again if I give her reason." He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing in the scent of vanilla and cinnamon that clung to her skin. "Trust me. Please." Claire's hands fisted in his shirt. "Come back." "I will." "Promise me." "Clara." "Promise me, Damien, because I can't—" Her voice cracked. "I can't lose you now." The raw vulnerability in her words nearly broke him. Damien kissed her hard and desperate, trying to memorize the taste of her mouth, the feel of her body pressed against his, the sound of her breath hitching. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he forced himself to step back. "I promise," he said. Then he left before she could see the lie in his eyes, because some promises were impossible to keep. The meeting location was an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, the same area where Damien had been ambushed a week ago. Vivian's sense of irony was impeccable. Damien arrived alone as instructed, parking 3 blocks away and approaching on foot. Morning fog rolled through empty streets, muffling sound and turning the world into something ghostly. His gun sat heavy against his ribs, a familiar weight that offered cold comfort. The warehouse loomed ahead, all rusted metal and shattered windows. No visible security. No obvious ambush points, which meant they were hidden. Damien checked his phone, one text from Roman sent 10 minutes ago. "Where are you?" No reply. Better his best friend stayed out of this. Damien powered down the phone completely and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Then he approached the warehouse's side entrance, testing the door. Unlocked. Of course. He stepped inside, gun drawn, eyes adjusting to the dim interior. The warehouse stretched vast and empty, morning light filtering through broken skylights to paint streaks across concrete floors stained with decades of industrial grime. Shipping containers lined the far wall like steel monoliths. And in the center of the space, elegant and serpentine in a black coat, stood Vivian, alone. Damien didn't believe that for a second. He moved forward slowly, weapon raised, scanning for threats. "Where are they?" Where who? Vivian's smile was all teeth. Your backup, the shooters, the people waiting to put a bullet in me the second I let my guard down. You wound me, Damien. This is a private conversation. Nothing about this is private. Fair point. Vivian gestured to the empty space around them. But as you can see, I came alone. Professional courtesy. You don't do courtesy. You do manipulation. Same thing in our world. She took a step closer, heels clicking on concrete. Did you bring the girl? No. Smart. I'd hate to burn such a charming little bakery. Vivian circled him like a predator evaluating prey. She's pretty, soft, completely wrong for you. What do you want, Vivian? What I've always wanted. You, the Empire. Everything your father promised me 3 years ago before you decided playing Bachelor was more fun than doing your duty. Duty? Damien's laugh came out harsh. Is that what you call attempting murder? I call it motivation. Vivian stopped circling, facing him directly. You needed a reminder that actions have consequences, that disappearing into civilian life isn't an option for people like us. So you tried to kill me. I tried to wound you. There's a difference. Her smile widened. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. What I wanted was you desperate, vulnerable, and reminded that the only person you can trust is me. You're insane. I'm practical. Vivian moved closer, close enough that Damien could see the cold calculation in her dark eyes. You think that girl loves you? She loves the fantasy, the wounded prince who showed up at her door, the dangerous man playing protector. But the moment she sees what you really are, the bodies you've buried, the blood on your hands, the darkness you carry, she'll run. You don't know her. I don't need to. I know you. Vivian's hand came up to rest against his chest, right over his racing heart. And I know that in 48 hours when you walk down that aisle and marry me, she'll be nothing but a memory. Damien grabbed her wrist, not gently. I'm not marrying you. Yes, you are. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, my father won't force it without proof of your betrayal. Then it's a good thing I have proof, Vivian smiled. Of yours. Ice flooded Damien's veins. What? She pulled her hand free and retrieved her phone, pulling up a video file. I've been very busy this past week. While you were gathering evidence against me, I was gathering evidence against you. She hit play. The video showed Clara's apartment, filmed through the window from the building across the street. Damien recognized the timestamp, 2 nights ago. He watched himself arrive, watched Clara open the door, watched them embrace in the doorway. Then the camera zoomed in, close enough to capture the kiss, close enough to capture everything. Lovely footage, don't you think? Vivian's voice dripped poison. Damien Moretti, heir to the Empire, carrying on an affair with a civilian, his most trusted enforcer's baby sister, no less. The scandal would be delicious. So what? Release it. I don't care. Don't you? Vivian tilted her head. Because I have more footage than this. Hours of it, actually. You arriving at her bakery, leaving at dawn. And my personal favorite, she swiped to another video. This morning, the intimate goodbye, the promises, the desperate kissing. Damien's jaw tightened. What's your point? My point is leverage. Vivian pocketed her phone. You have 48 hours until our wedding. If you show up and play the dutiful heir, this footage disappears. Clara stays safe, anonymous, forgotten. But if you refuse, her smile turned razored. I release everything, to your father, to the organization, to Roman. The name hit like a physical blow. Roman didn't know the full extent of Damien's relationship with Clara. Didn't know about the kiss, the nights together, the promises made in darkness. Learning the truth would destroy him. Roman will kill me, Damien said quietly. Probably. But before he does, he'll kill her. Vivian's eyes glittered. Because that's what family does when you betray them. They eliminate the threat. Clara's not a threat. She's a civilian who seduced his boss, who manipulated the heir to the Moretti Empire, who made you weak. Vivian moved closer, voice dropping to a whisper. And Roman loves you like a brother, finding out you've been lying to him, using him, violating the one boundary he drew. He won't forgive that. and he won't forgive her. Every word was a knife sliding between Damien's ribs. Because she was right. Roman's rage when he discovered the truth had been apocalyptic. Learning the depth of Damien's deception, the nights together, the emotional intimacy, the broken promises, would push him over the edge, and Clara would pay the price. "So here's the deal," Vivian said. "Marry me. Play the perfect heir. Give me the throne I've earned. And in exchange, Clara Vale goes back to her little bakery and lives out her ordinary life completely untouched. No threats, no exposure, no vengeful brother." She smiled. "Or refuse, and watch her world burn. Your choice." Damien's hands shook with the effort of not putting a bullet between her eyes. But killing Vivian solved nothing. The footage existed somewhere, backed up and ready to release if anything happened to her. And even if he found it, destroyed it, there would be copies. Evidence. Witnesses. Vivian had won. She'd outplayed him completely. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" Damien forced out. "You don't, but you know I'm practical." Vivian straightened his collar with possessive intimacy. "I don't want Clara dead. I want her forgotten. Having you for a husband is prize enough. You don't love me. Love is for civilians. I want power." Her fingers traced his jaw. "And you're going to give it to me. And if I refuse, then you're the one who kills her, not me. You." Vivian stepped back, smile widening. "The moment you make Clara matter more than her safety, you sign her death warrant. So the question is, how much does she actually matter?" The question hung in the air like a noose. Damien stared at this woman who'd orchestrated everything. The ambush, the manipulation, the trap closing around him from every angle. She'd known exactly which pressure points to exploit, had calculated his every move before he'd made it, and the worst part was knowing she was right. Walking away from Clara meant saving her. Choosing her meant destroying her. Some choices weren't choices at all. 48 hours, Damien said, voice dead. "Then what?" "Then you show up at the estate, put on the suit, and marry me in front of every family that matters." Vivian's expression turned almost gentle. "And after that, you become the king you were always meant to be, with me beside you. And Clara becomes a memory, a moment of weakness, nothing more." Damien's finger tightened on the trigger of the gun still hanging at his side. One shot, center mass, end this nightmare. But Vivian's eyes tracked the movement, and her smile didn't waver. "Shoot me and the footage auto-releases in 6 hours, she said calmly. "I have systems, Damien. Fail-safes. You can't win this by killing me." "I can try. But you won't, because trying means risking Clara, and you care about her too much for that." Vivian turned toward the exit. 48 hours. Don't be late to your own wedding." She left. Damien stood alone in the abandoned warehouse, gun still drawn, everything inside him screaming to chase her down and end this. But his feet stayed rooted to the concrete, because Vivian was right about one thing. He cared too much. And caring was the most dangerous weapon anyone could use against him. Damien returned to Clara's apartment 30 minutes later to find it empty. He checked every room, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, growing more frantic with each vacant space. Her phone sat on the coffee table, dark and silent. No note, no message, nothing. Terror flooded his system. Vivian had Clara, or Roman did, or someone worse. Damien's phone buzzed, text from Roman. "We need to talk, now, estate. Don't make me come find you." A second text, this one from Clara's phone. "I'm with Roman. Told him everything. I'm sorry. See." The words hit like bullets. Clara had gone to Roman, had confessed everything, had walked directly into the nightmare Damien had spent days trying to prevent. Damien grabbed his keys and ran. The drive to the Moretti estate took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Damien's mind raced through scenarios. Roman's rage, Clara's fear, the confrontation spiraling into violence. He'd seen Roman angry before, had watched his best friend dismantle enemies with cold precision. But family betrayal was different. Family betrayal made people irrational, deadly. Damien pulled through the estate gates and parked at the main house. Roman stood on the front steps, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. Alone. "Where is she?" Damien demanded, jumping out of the car. Inside, safe, unharmed. Roman's voice came out flat and emotionless. For now. Roman! Shut up. Roman descended the steps slowly, each movement controlled. Clara told me everything. The ambush. You showing up at her bakery. Her patching you up. The lies. He stopped 3 feet away. Everything. I can explain. There's nothing to explain. You fucked my sister. The blunt vulgarity was so unlike Roman that it stopped Damien cold. It wasn't like that, Damien said. Then what was it like? Roman's control finally cracked, voice rising. You violated the one boundary I ever drew. The one person I told you was off limits, and you couldn't even respect that long enough to find literally any other place to hide. I didn't plan it. You never do. Roman's laugh came out broken. That's your problem, Damien. You make impulsive decisions and expect everyone else to clean up the mess. Well, I can't clean this up, because this time the mess is my sister. She's not a mess. She's in love with you. The words exploded out of Roman like shrapnel. She came here this morning in tears because Vivian sent her a photo of her own bakery with a threat attached. She told me everything because she was terrified you were going to get yourself killed trying to protect her. Roman's hands fisted at his sides. So congratulations. You didn't just use her. You made her care. And now she's got a target on her back that I can't remove. Guilt twisted like a blade in Damien's chest. Where is she? Upstairs. In one of the guest rooms. Under guard. Under guard? Because she tried to leave 3 times to find you. Roman's expression hardened. She thinks you're going to do something stupid. I am. What? I'm going to marry Vivian. The words fell like stones into water, creating ripples of silence. Roman stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Vivian has footage of Clara and me together. If I don't marry her, she releases it. Your father sees it. The organization sees it. And Clara becomes the civilian who corrupted the heir. Damien met his best friend's eyes. You know what happens then, so yeah. I'm marrying Vivian, and Clara goes back to her bakery and pretends none of this happened. That's your plan? Sacrifice yourself to save her? It's the only plan that keeps her alive. Roman was quiet for a long moment, something complicated passing across his features. She won't accept that. She doesn't have a choice. Neither do you. Roman turned back toward the house. Come on, you need to tell her yourself. They walked inside together, climbing the marble staircase to the second floor. Roman led him to a guest room at the end of the hall where 2 guards stood post. They stepped aside without argument. Roman opened the door. Clara stood by the window, silhouetted against morning light streaming through expensive curtains. She turned when they entered, and relief flooded her face for exactly 3 seconds before she read Damien's expression. No, she said immediately. Clara, I know what you're going to say, and the answer is no. You don't know. You're going to marry her. Clara crossed the room in quick strides, stopping directly in front of him. You're going to sacrifice yourself and walk away and expect me to just accept it. It's the only way. It's the coward's way. Her voice shook with fury. You promised me you'd fight. You promised you'd come back. And now you're standing here telling me you're giving up. I'm not giving up. I'm protecting you. I don't need protection. Clara's hands fisted in his shirt. I need you to stop making decisions for me like I'm some fragile thing that'll break the second things get hard. This isn't hard, Clara. This is impossible. Then let's make it possible. Tears streamed down her face now, angry and desperate. We find the original footage. We destroy it. We expose Vivian for what she is, and she has backups, fail-safes. She planned for everything. Damien's hands came up to cradle her face, thumbs wiping away tears. There's no winning this. Not without you getting caught in the crossfire. So let me get caught. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. And I'm choosing you by walking away. That's not a choice. It's a surrender. It's survival. For who? Clara's voice broke completely. Because from where I'm standing, this kills both of us. Just slower. Damien pressed his forehead to hers, breathing in her scent one last time. Vanilla and cinnamon and heartbreak. I'm sorry, he whispered. Don't. Clara's fingers dug into his shoulders. Don't apologize. Don't walk away. Don't make this the end. It has to be. Why? Because I love you. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and terrible and too late to take back. Clara made a sound like all the air had left her lungs. Then stay. I can't. Yes, you can. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Damien pulled back, forcing himself to step away from the warmth of her. This is how you survive. By forgetting me, moving on, going back to your ordinary life. I don't want ordinary. I want you. You can't have both. Then I choose you. And I choose your safety over my happiness. Damien looked at Roman, who'd been standing silent by the door. Keep her here. Don't let her leave until the wedding's over. Damien, Roman started. That's an order. Roman's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Clara lunged forward, but Roman caught her, holding her back as she fought to reach Damien. Don't do this, please. Damien, don't. Her voice cracked into sobs. Damien forced himself to turn away, to walk toward the door, to keep moving even as every instinct screamed to run back to her. I'll kill her, Clara choked out. I'll kill Vivian myself before I let you do this. Damien paused at the threshold, looking back one final time. Clara struggled against Roman's hold, tears streaming down her face, hair wild, eyes blazing with fury and heartbreak. Beautiful, fierce, completely his, and completely impossible. Goodbye, Clara, Damien said. Then he walked out and closed the door on the sound of her screaming his name, Mbokits. Damien made it 3 steps down the hallway before his knees buckled. He caught himself against the wall, one hand pressed to the expensive wallpaper, breathing through the pain radiating from his chest that had nothing to do with bullet wounds and everything to do with the sound of Clara breaking apart behind a locked door. Footsteps approached. Roman appeared beside him, expression unreadable. You okay? No? Good, because that was the hardest thing I've ever watched. Imagine living it. Roman was quiet for a moment. She meant it, you know, about killing Vivian. I know. She's civilian, not trained. She'd die trying, which is why you're keeping her here. And you're really going through with this? The wedding? Damien straightened, forcing steel back into his spine. Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. Not when the alternative is Clara dead. Roman studied him for a long moment, something complicated passing across his features. You really love her. Yeah. Enough to give up everything? Enough to give up anything. Damien met his best friend's eyes, including her. Roman's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things in the boardroom. About you using her, I know that's not what happened. Isn't it? No? You're an idiot who makes impulsive decisions, but you're not cruel. Roman clapped a hand on Damien's shoulder. And for what it's also worth, Clara could do worse than you. She could do a lot better. Maybe. But she chose you anyway. Roman squeezed once and let go. So don't make her regret it by dying in some stupid noble sacrifice before the wedding. I'll try. Try harder, because if you die, I have to tell her. And I don't think either of us would survive that. Damien nodded, not trusting his voice. Roman headed back toward Clara's room. I'll keep her safe. You have my word. I know. Then Damien descended the stairs, walked out of the estate, and climbed into his car with mechanical precision. He had 48 hours until his wedding. 48 hours until he married a woman who'd tried to kill him. 48 hours to figure out how to survive a future that had just become unbearable. The engine roared to life and Damien drove away from the estate, from Clara, from everything he'd ever wanted. And with every mile, the cage closed tighter. By the time he reached his penthouse apartment in the city, Damien had made peace with the decision. He would marry Vivian. He would give her the empire. He would play the dutiful heir and perfect husband. And he would spend the rest of his life pretending that a bakery girl with flour-dusted hands and a soft smile hadn't completely destroyed him, because some loves were worth dying for, and some were worth living for. Clara was worth both, which meant protecting her was the only thing that mattered, even if it killed him slowly from the inside out. Damien poured himself a drink, whiskey, neat, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there, Clara was being held in a gilded prison, crying over a man who wasn't worth her tears. And somewhere else, Vivian was celebrating her victory, already planning how to consolidate power once the wedding was done. The empire sprawled beneath him like a living thing, violent, beautiful, unforgiving. His inheritance, his curse, his cage. Damien raised the glass in a silent toast to nothing and no one. "Here's to impossible choices," he muttered. Then he drank until the burning in his throat matched the burning in his chest. 48 hours. 2 days until everything ended, or everything began. Damien honestly couldn't tell the difference anymore. Outside, the city glittered like broken glass catching light. Beautiful and deadly, just like everything else in his world. 24 hours before the wedding, Damien's private investigator walked into his penthouse carrying a manila envelope that would change everything. "You're going to want to see this," Marco said, setting it on the glass coffee table like it might explode. Damien looked up from the whiskey he'd been nursing for the past 3 hours. "Unless it's proof Vivian never existed, I don't care." "Better." Marco opened the envelope and spread a series of photographs across the table. "We went back through every piece of surveillance from the night of your ambush. Traffic cams, security footage, private cameras, and we found something your girlfriend missed." "She's not my—" Damien stopped, staring at the photos. "What am I looking at?" "Vivian's SUV. Same night, same time. But look at the timestamp." Marco pointed to a digital clock visible in one frame. "This was taken 45 minutes before the ambush. She's leaving the DeLuca estate." So according to her alibi, she was visiting a friend across town that night, but this puts her heading in the opposite direction, toward the ambush site. Marco pulled up another photo, and this traffic camera caught her SUV parked 3 blocks from the intersection, 20 minutes before the shooting started. Damien's pulse quickened. "That doesn't prove—" "Wait." Marco spread out more photos. "After the ambush, her vehicle doesn't return to the DeLuca estate for another 6 hours. So where was she?" He slid across a final image. "Here, at a private airfield outside the city, meeting with the same 3 shooters whose bank accounts received payments the day before." The photo was grainy but clear enough. Vivian, the 3 masked men, an exchange of what looked like documents or money, time-stamped 2 hours after the ambush. "This is it," Damien breathed. "This is actual proof." "Gets better." Marco pulled out a small recording device. One of the shooters started talking to save himself from federal charges. "We have audio. Vivian's voice giving direct orders." He hit play. Vivian's voice came through sharp and clear. "Wounded, not killed. I need him desperate, not dead. Can you manage that, or should I find professionals who can?" A male voice responded, "We can manage, but if he fights back, about them, Siki, then adapt. I'm paying you enough to handle 1 man." The recording ended. Damien stared at the device like it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Evidence. Real, undeniable, ironclad evidence. The kind that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. The kind that would destroy Vivian completely. "How many copies?" Damien asked. 17. Distributed across secure locations, encrypted cloud storage. Physical copies in safety deposit boxes. Marco smiled. "If anything happens to you or the original files, they auto-release to every major family in the city, plus federal investigators." "You beautiful bastard." "I had good motivation. Your girl made excellent coffee while we were staking out her bakery." Damien's head snapped up. "You went to Claire's bakery. Had to make sure she stayed safe while you were busy being noble and stupid." Marco shrugged. "She's worried about you, by the way. Tried to get me to tell her where you were. I didn't, obviously. But she's stubborn." "I know." "Good stubborn or bad stubborn?" "The kind that makes you want to live through tomorrow." Marco's expression softened. "Then I guess you better make sure you do." Damien stood, energy flooding back into his exhausted body for the first time in days. "Call everyone. Every lieutenant, every captain, every family that matters. Emergency meeting at the estate. 1 hour." "What about Vivian?" "Especially Vivian." Damien's smile turned predatory. "It's time to return the favor." Bulka. The boardroom filled quickly, faster than last time, maybe because everyone sensed blood in the water. Giovanni sat at the head of the table, flanked by Moretti lieutenants. The DeLuca family arrived next: Carlo, Antonio, and finally Vivienne, elegant in midnight blue and completely unaware of the trap waiting. Her eyes found Damien's across the room, and she smiled, like she'd already won, like the wedding tomorrow was just a formality. Damien smiled back, and something in that expression made Vivienne's smile falter. "This is highly irregular," Giovanni said once everyone was seated. "The wedding is tomorrow. We should be preparing, not holding meetings." "This won't take long," Damien replied, moving to stand at the opposite end of the table. "I called everyone here because I have something to share about the person who orchestrated my assassination attempt." Vivienne's expression remained perfectly neutral, but her fingers tightened on her water glass. "We already discussed this," Giovanni said impatiently. "You presented circumstantial evidence that proved nothing. That was a week ago. I've been busy since then." Damien nodded to Marco, who began distributing copies of the photographs to everyone at the table. Traffic camera footage from the night of the ambush, time-stamped and geolocated, showing Vivienne's vehicle at the scene before, during, and after the attack. Vivienne glanced at the photos, then back at Damien. "I told you, I was visiting a friend at a private airfield? Interesting friend." Damien slid across the photo of her meeting with the shooters. "That's you. 2 hours after someone tried to kill me, meeting with the same men who pulled the triggers." Murmurs rippled around the table. Carlo De Luca leaned forward, studying the image. "This could be doctored, which is why we have audio." Damien hit play on the recording device. Vivienne's voice filled the room, cold and clinical as she gave orders to wound but not kill. The silence afterward was deafening. Every face turned toward Vivienne, watching her perfect mask begin to crack at the edges. "Clever editing," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Audio can be manipulated." Not this audio. It's been authenticated by 3 independent forensic analysts." Damien moved around the table slowly, closing the distance between them. "You tried to kill me. You manipulated my father. You threatened an innocent civilian, and you were arrogant enough to think you'd get away with it. Vivienne's composure finally shattered. She stood abruptly, chair scraping across marble. "This is a setup. Damien's manufacturing evidence because he doesn't want to honor the marriage agreement." "The marriage agreement is void," Giovanni interrupted, his voice cold as winter. "No alliance is worth partnering with someone who orders hits on their own allies." Carlo De Luca's face had gone pale. "Vivienne, tell me this isn't true." "Father, tell me." Vivienne looked around the table, reading the judgment in every face, the alliances crumbling in real time. She was brilliant enough to know when the game was lost. Her mask fell away completely, replaced by cold fury. "Fine." She turned to Damien. "Yes, I orchestrated the ambush. Yes, I tried to have you killed, not because I hated you, but because you were weak. Too busy playing civilian hero with some bakery girl to do your actual job." Gasps echoed around the table. "You knew about Clara?" Damien's voice went deadly quiet. "Of course I knew. I know everything." Vivienne's laugh came out bitter. "And I used it. The threats, the footage, the leverage, all of it designed to force you back into line." She leaned forward, palms flat on the table. "Because left to your own devices, you would have thrown away this empire for a woman who doesn't even understand what you are." "And what am I? A killer. A ruler. A necessary monster." Vivienne's eyes blazed. "Just like me. That's why we belong together. Not because we love each other, but because we understand the price of power." "You're right," Damien said quietly. "I am a monster, but I'm the kind that protects what matters. You're the kind that destroys it." He turned to Giovanni. "The evidence is yours. Do with it what you will, but the marriage is off, permanently." Giovanni studied his son for a long moment, something like respect flickering behind cold eyes. "Agreed. The alliance with the De Luca family is severed immediately." Carlos stood, rage and shame warring across his features. "We will deal with our daughter internally. You have my word, this betrayal will be answered." "See that it is." Giovanni's gaze cut to Vivienne. "You're no longer welcome in this house, or any Moretti property. Consider yourself exiled." Vivienne's perfect composure finally cracked completely. "You're making a mistake. All of you. Damien's too weak to lead, too compromised by civilian sentiment. He'll destroy everything you've built." "Get out," Damien said. "Gladly." Vivian grabbed her purse, moving toward the door with as much dignity as she could salvage. At the threshold, she stopped. Enjoy your little baker, Damien. I'm sure she'll make a lovely distraction while your empire crumbles around you. Then she was gone, heels clicking down the corridor like a countdown timer that had finally run out. The room exhaled collectively. Giovanni stood slowly. We'll need to shore up alliances. The DeLuca partnership was significant. I'll handle it, Damien interrupted. Will you? Or will you be too busy playing house with a civilian? Father and son stared at each other across the boardroom. I can do both, Damien said. Can you? Because leading this organization requires total commitment. No distractions, no weaknesses. Clara's not a weakness. She's the only thing keeping me human enough to lead without becoming what you are. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Giovanni's expression went cold. Watch yourself, boy. Or what? You'll disown me? Name another heir? Damien moved around the table, stopping directly in front of his father. Go ahead. But we both know there is no one else. I'm the only person in this room ruthless enough and sane enough to hold this empire together. And I'm telling you right now, I'm doing it my way. With Clara. Take it or leave it. The standoff lasted forever and no time at all. Finally, Giovanni's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You've got more spine than I thought. Maybe you can lead after all. Maybe I already am. Giovanni nodded once, respect earned through confrontation, not given through blood, and left the boardroom. The other families followed until only Damien and Roman remained. Roman had been silent throughout the entire confrontation, watching from his position by the door. Now he crossed to Damien, expression unreadable. She's still locked in the guest room, Roman said. Hasn't eaten, barely sleeps, just stares at the door waiting for you. I'll go to her. Wait. Roman grabbed his arm. Before you do, I need to say something. If this is another lecture, it's an apology. Roman's grip tightened. I judged you, called you a coward and selfish, and every other thing I could think of to hurt you. But watching you these past few days, watching you choose her safety over everything else? His voice roughened. You're a better man than I gave you credit for. And my sister's lucky to have you. Roman, but if you hurt her again, I will kill you. Best friend or not. Clear? Crystal. Roman released him, stepping back. She's upstairs. Third door on the left. Keys in my pocket, but... He reached for it, then stopped. Actually, I don't think you'll need it. She's been picking the lock every few hours trying to escape. Despite everything, Damien laughed. Of course she has. Stubborn runs in the family. Roman headed for the exit. Don't screw this up. I'll try. Try harder. Then Damien was alone in the empty boardroom, surrounded by the evidence that had saved him and the silence that followed victory. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he just felt exhausted and desperate to see the woman he'd walked away from to keep her safe. Clara had indeed picked the lock. Damien arrived at the guest room to find the door slightly ajar and the space beyond empty. He checked the bathroom, the closet, under the bed, in case she'd decided to hide. Nothing. Panic set in. Then he heard it. Soft footsteps on the roof access stairs. Damien climbed to the estate's roof garden and found Clara sitting on the edge of a stone bench, wrapped in a borrowed jacket that was 3 sizes too big, staring at the city lights. She turned when she heard him approach, and relief flooded her face for exactly 2 seconds before anger replaced it. You're alive, she said flatly. I'm alive. Good. Because I was planning to kill you myself. Fair. Clara stood, crossing to him with quick strides. For a moment, Damien thought she might actually hit him. Instead, she threw her arms around him and held on like he might disappear. I hate you, she said against his chest. I know. You walked away. You locked me up. You tried to make decisions for me like I was some helpless thing that needed protecting. I know. And then you went and saved yourself anyway without me. Damien's arms came up to circle her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. I had help. From who? Your brother, my investigator, and the memory of a stubborn bakery owner who refused to let me give up. Clara pulled back just enough to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. You're not marrying her? No. Why not? Because I found proof she couldn't explain away. Because my father exiled her, because I decided I'd rather fight for what I want than surrender to what's expected. Damien's hands came up to frame her face, thumbs wiping away tears. And because I love you too much to let anyone take this away from us. Clara's breath hitched. Say that again. I love you. Again. I love you, Clara Vale. I love your stubbornness and your kindness and the way you make cinnamon rolls at 3 a.m. I love that you dragged me inside when you should have left me to die. I love that you refuse to let me make decisions for you, even when I'm trying to keep you safe. Damien pressed his forehead to hers. I love everything about you. And if you'll have me, knowing what I am, what I do, the darkness I carry, I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. Clara was crying openly now, her hands fisting in his shirt. You idiot! You absolute idiot! Is that a yes? It's a, you better never try to sacrifice yourself for me again, or I will actually kill you. Deal. And it's a, you're going to spend the next week apologizing for locking me in that room. I can do that. And it's a yes. Clara pulled him down and kissed him hard and desperate and absolutely certain. It's always been yes. Damien kissed her back like a drowning man finding oxygen, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of his mouth against hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the city glittered below them like scattered diamonds. What happens now? Clara asked. Now I take over the organization properly, shore up alliances, make sure Vivian stays exiled, run an empire. Damien tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and somewhere in all that, I sit in the corner of your bakery every morning and drink your terrible coffee. My coffee's not terrible. It's aggressively mediocre. Then don't drink it. I'll drink anything you make. Clara laughed, the sound bright and genuine and absolutely perfect. What about Roman? He's still furious with you. Roman gave me permission to date his sister, and a death threat if I screw it up. So really, we're closer than ever. You're impossible. You love me anyway. Unfortunately. But her smile said otherwise. They stood on the rooftop for a long time, wrapped in each other's warmth, while the city breathed below them. Somewhere in the sprawl of lights and shadows, Vivian was licking her wounds and planning her next move. Somewhere else, Giovanni was calculating how to turn his son's civilian entanglement into political advantage. But up here, none of that mattered. Up here, there was only Clara and Damien and the impossible future they'd fought for. I have one condition, Clara said eventually. Name it. The bakery stays mine, not protected by the organization, not absorbed into Moretti property, not turned into some money laundering front. Mine. Deal. And you don't send armed guards to stand outside like creepy gargoyles. I can't promise that. Damien, best I can do is discreet guards who pretend to be customers. You won't even know they're there. Clara sighed. Fine, but they have to actually buy something. I'm not running a charity. They'll buy so many croissants you'll run out by noon. Then I'll make more. She looked up at him, expression softening. Are you really sure about this? About us? Because once people know, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything. Even though I'm civilian? Even though your world and mine don't fit? They'll fit. We'll make them fit. Damien kissed her forehead. Besides, I'm pretty sure your world is the only thing that's going to keep mine from turning me into something unrecognizable. No pressure. You can handle it. Can I? Clara, you patched up a gunshot wound with embroidery thread and locked a Mafia heir in a guest room against his will. You can handle anything. She smiled. Fair point. They descended from the rooftop together, hands intertwined, and walked through the estate that would become as familiar to Clara as her own bakery over the coming months. Roman waited in the main hall, arms crossed, expression carefully neutral. When he saw them together, hands clasped, faces soft with something that looked dangerously like happiness, his jaw tightened. Then he sighed. I'm going to regret this, Roman said. Probably, Damien agreed. If you hurt her, you'll kill me. I'm aware. You've mentioned it 3 times today. 4 times, Clara corrected. He sent me a text earlier just to reiterate. Roman's mouth twitched. Because apparently my best friend is an idiot who needs reminding. I'm standing right here, Damien said. I know, that's why I'm saying it. But Roman's expression had softened slightly. Take care of her. With my life. Good. Roman nodded once, then looked at his sister. You sure about this? Clara squeezed Damien's hand. Completely. Then I guess I'm happy for you, both of you. Roman headed toward the exit. But seriously, Damien, don't make me choose between you and her, because we both know who I'm picking. As you should. Roman left, and Clara and Damien stood alone in the marble entryway of the estate that had witnessed generations of violence, power, and ruthless ambition. Your family's intense, Clara said. You're part of it now. Welcome to the circus. Should I be worried? Terrified, probably. Damien pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. But I'll be right beside you through all of it. Promise? Promise. 1 year later, Clara's Corner Cafe had become the worst-kept secret in the criminal underworld. Everyone knew the tiny bakery on the corner of 5th and Morrison belonged to Damien Moretti's girlfriend. Everyone knew the quiet man in the expensive suit who sat in the corner booth every morning drinking espresso and working from a tablet was the heir to the most powerful crime family in the city. And everyone knew better than to cause trouble within 3 blocks of the establishment. Clara had adapted to her new reality with surprising grace. She'd learned to read the subtle signs of danger. The way Damien's guards positioned themselves, the tension in his shoulders when a threat emerged, the coded language he used when business called during their quiet mornings together. But she'd also maintained her boundaries. The bakery stayed hers. The recipes stayed secret. The warmth and safety of the space remained untouched by the violence that defined Damien's world. It was a strange, imperfect balance, but it worked. Damien arrived at 7 a.m., like clockwork, nodded to the discreet security team positioned across the street, and stepped into warmth and the scent of fresh bread. Clara stood behind the counter, flour dusting her apron, her hair twisted into a messy bun. When she saw him, her face lit up the way it always did, like he was something good instead of something dangerous. You're late, she said. Meeting ran long. Everything okay? Fine. Just a territorial dispute with the Italians on the north side. Nothing exciting. Clara poured his espresso and set it on the counter. Your definition of nothing exciting is deeply concerning. Welcome to my world. Our world, she corrected. Damien's mouth curved into a rare, genuine smile. Our world. He settled into his corner booth, the one with perfect sightlines to both entrances and the kitchen, and opened his tablet. Business emails, territory reports, the endless administrative work of running a criminal empire. Clara brought him a croissant he hadn't ordered, setting it beside his espresso. Eat. You look tired. I'm fine. Eat, or I'll call Roman and tell him you're not taking care of yourself. That's a low blow. It's effective. Now eat. Damien ate. The bakery filled slowly with morning customers. Regulars who knew Clara by name, tourists drawn by online reviews, and the occasional mobster pretending to care about pastries while actually checking on Damien's well-being. It was chaos and comfort in equal measure. Everything Damien's life had been missing. Around 10 a.m., the door chimed and Roman walked in, carrying a folder of documents that meant work. But he stopped at the counter first, kissing his sister's cheek and accepting the coffee she'd already prepared. You spoil him, Damien called from his booth. He's family, Clara replied. I'm contractually obligated. Roman joined Damien, sliding the folder across the table. Territory agreements from last night's meeting. Need your signature. Damien flipped through the documents, scanning terms and clauses. The Petrov family agreed to this? After some persuasion. What kind of persuasion? The legal kind. Mostly? Roman sipped his coffee. Your girlfriend makes terrible espresso, by the way. I know. I drink it anyway. That's love. That's stupidity. Same thing. Roman leaned back, studying Damien with an expression that had softened considerably over the past year. You look happy. I am happy. Good. You deserve it. Roman's gaze cut to Clara, who was laughing with a customer at the counter. She deserves it too. Don't forget that. I won't. See that you don't. Roman stood, draining his coffee. I'm headed to the docks to oversee the new shipment. Call if you need me. Will do. Roman left and Damien returned to his work. The morning passed in comfortable rhythm. Emails answered, calls made. The Empire maintained from a corner booth that smelled like butter and sugar. At noon, Clara flipped the sign to closed for lunch and locked the front door. She poured herself coffee and joined Damien in his booth, sliding into the seat across from him. "Busy morning?" she asked. "Nothing I couldn't handle." "Good, because I have news." Something in her tone made Damien look up from his tablet. "What kind of news?" Clara's smile turned nervous and excited and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "The kind that means you're going to be sitting in this booth for a very long time." Damien's breath caught. "Clara, I'm pregnant." The words detonated in the small space between them. Damien stared at her, brain struggling to process the information. A baby. Their baby. A tiny life that would inherit his name, his empire, his darkness. And Clara's warmth, her kindness, her unshakable humanity. "Say something," Clara whispered. Damien's voice broke. He tried again. "Are you sure?" 3 tests. All positive. I have a doctor's appointment next week to confirm, but yeah, I'm sure. "And you want this?" "Do you?" Damien reached across the table, taking her hands in his. "I want everything with you, including this, especially this." Relief flooded Clara's face. "Good, because I was terrified you'd think it was too dangerous or too complicated, or it's going to be both those things, but we'll handle it." Damien squeezed her hands. "Together." "Together," Clara agreed. They sat in the empty bakery, holding hands across sticky tabletop, while the magnitude of their new future settled around them. A child, an heir, a life that would bridge 2 incompatible worlds and somehow make them fit. It was terrifying and beautiful and absolutely impossible, just like everything else about them. "Roman's going to kill me," Damien said eventually. "Probably, but he'll also be the best uncle in the history of uncles, so it balances out." "Your definition of balances out is as concerning as mine." Clara laughed, bright and genuine. "We're perfect for each other." "We really are." Outside, the city continued its violent churn. Deals made in shadows. Bodies dropped in rivers. Empires rising and falling over breakfast. But inside Clara's corner cafe, wrapped in warmth and the lingering scent of cinnamon, Damien Moretti allowed himself to believe in impossible things. He believed a monster could become something more. He believed a civilian and a crime lord could build a life together. He believed their child would inherit the best of both worlds instead of the worst. And most importantly, he believed that the woman sitting across from him, with flour-dusted hands and a soft smile and absolutely no idea how completely she'd saved him, was worth every sacrifice, every fight, every impossible choice he'd made to keep her. "I love you," Damien said. Clara's smile widened. "I know. You tell me every morning. I'll tell you every morning for the rest of our lives." "Good." She stood, moving around the table to slide into the booth beside him. "Because I plan to hold you to that." Damien wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, and stared out at the city that had shaped him into something deadly. But this woman, this impossible, stubborn, beautiful woman, had reshaped him into something human, something capable of love and softness and building a future that looked nothing like his past. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing about their life together would ever be easy. But sitting here, with Clara warm against his side and their unborn child growing between them and the bakery humming with the promise of ordinary days to come, Damien Moretti finally understood what his father had never learned. Power meant nothing without something worth protecting, and he'd found his worth in a tiny bakery that smelled like home. The end? What? Epilogue. 5 years later, a small boy with dark hair and his mother's green eyes sat in the corner booth of Clara's corner cafe, carefully drawing pictures while his father worked beside him. The city still feared the name Moretti, but in this space, that name just meant family. And family, messy, imperfect, dangerous, beautiful family, was the only empire that truly mattered.